Imagine you're scrubbing floors in a rundown hotel, waiting tables for pennies, and washing laundry just to survive. Nobody knows your name. Nobody believes you'll ever be more than just another struggling worker, breaking your back for a few lousy bucks. But what if I told you that one of those overlooked waitresses would go on to rule Hollywood? That's exactly what happened to Joan Crawford. Before the diamonds, the mansions, and the Academy Awards, she was just a poor girl hustling to get by. No connections, no safety net, just raw ambition and a refusal to be ignored. Hollywood didn't make Joan Crawford. She made herself. And her story? It's not just about fame, it's about obsession, reinvention, and a fight to stay on top in an industry that chews women up and spits them out. In the beginning. Have you ever heard those stories about people who came from absolutely nothing and clawed their way to the top, refusing to take no for an answer? Well, Joan Crawford was definitely one of them. And when I say nothing, I mean nothing. You see, she wasn't born into privilege, didn't have family connections, and didn't get any lucky breaks handed to her. Every bit of success she achieved, she had to fight for, sometimes quite literally. She literally turned her life around completely. And to emphasize that point, this is a great place for you to know Joan Crawford wasn't even born Joan Crawford. She came into this world as Lucille Fay LeSueur sometime around 1904 or 1905. Now, there's been some debate about the exact year, but let's be real, that's the least of her problems. From the very start, life didn't deal her an easy hand. For instance, her father was gone before she even had a chance to know him. And her mother? Well, let's just say she wasn't the warm and fuzzy type. Joan's childhood was filled with instability, moving from place to place, never really knowing what home was supposed to feel like. In a strange turn of events, her mother eventually remarried, and now that they were a big, happy family, you'd think Joan would be loved and cared for, right? Well, wrong. Because as soon as her mother remarried, things went from bad to worse. Imagine being a little girl, desperate for love, but instead of hugs and encouragement, you get cold indifference, or worse, outright cruelty. That was Joan's reality. Her stepfather, a man named Henry Casson, ran a little theater, which you'd think would be a dream for a girl who would later become a movie star. But instead of being an escape, it was just another stage for her struggles. She had to work from an early age, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. School was a luxury she couldn't afford. She bounced around different schools, but her education was constantly interrupted by the need to survive. She worked as a dishwasher, she scrubbed floors, she did whatever it took just to get by, and when she wasn't working, she was dealing with something no child should ever have to face: abuse. Yeah, Joan's early life wasn't just hard, it was brutal. She later hinted at the things she went through, but she never played the victim. She didn't wallow in self-pity. Instead, she did what she always did. She kept moving forward. Most people would have broken under that kind of pressure, but not Joan. She was already forming the steel backbone that would make her unstoppable. The struggle to survive. Picture this. You're young, broke, and stuck in a cycle of dead-end jobs just to keep yourself afloat. That was Joan Crawford before she was Joan Crawford. Unlike a lot of stars coming up, her parents were far from rich. She had no fancy connections or safety net of any sort. In a nutshell, as far as life was concerned, she was on her own. However, maybe it was forged from the sad circumstance of her own life. But coming up, Joan had an insane work ethic and a strong determination to survive and not be a victim of her circumstances. Before you saw her face in front of the camera, she was bent over scrubbing floors, washing dishes, waiting tables. Basically, whatever paid the bills. And let me tell you, these weren't cushy, part-time gigs where she could leisurely figure out her next move. No, she was barely scraping by, doing the kind of work that leaves your feet aching and your hands raw. Ever done a job where people look right through you, like you're invisible? Joan lived that reality every single day. As a waitress, she would be smiling through exhaustion while people barely noticed her. She was a laundress, washing other people's clothes while dreaming of a life where she wouldn't have to break her back just to survive. She even worked as a salesgirl, standing for hours on end, trying to sell things she probably couldn't afford herself. And you know what makes this even crazier? She wasn't just struggling financially, she was being underestimated every step of the way. No one looked at the young girl folding laundry or carrying trays and thought, "Oh, she's going to be a movie star someday." No one believed in her. But that didn't matter, because she believed in herself. Most people in her position would have settled. They would have accepted that this was just life. Wake up, work, go home, repeat. But Joan? She wasn't built for that kind of life. She knew she wanted more, and she was willing to fight tooth and nail to get it. Dancing to escape. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. Joan Crawford may have been stuck in a cycle of back-breaking jobs, but she had one escape: dance. And when I say dance, I don't mean she just enjoyed it. I mean, it was her lifeline. It was the one thing that made her feel alive, the one thing that made her believe she could be somebody. After a long shift waiting tables or scrubbing floors, instead of collapsing into bed, she'd throw herself into dancing. She didn't have formal training, no fancy lessons, but she had pure, raw energy. And when she moved, people noticed. On the bright side, she was a really good dancer, so she figured she'd start dancing for money. She started performing in local theaters and amateur contests, not just for fun, but because winning meant prize money. That prize money meant food, rent, basic survival. So every time she stepped onto a dance floor, she danced like her life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. However, what started out as a way to make a few extra bucks began to grow into something even bigger. She began to make a name for herself in the underground dance scene. One win led to another, and before long, she found herself traveling to Kansas City, then Chicago. Bigger cities, bigger competitions, bigger opportunities. Just like that, she wasn't just another small-town girl anymore. She was climbing, inch by inch, step by step. And whether people realized it or not, Joan Crawford had already started her rise. She just had no idea yet. Path to Hollywood. By now, Crawford had danced her way out of small-town life and into bigger cities. But if she was being honest with herself, she knew dancing could only take her so far. If she wanted more out of life, she needed something bigger, something life-changing. And that something could only come in the form of Hollywood. Now don't go thinking she just packed a suitcase, hopped on a train, and the doors of MGM magically flung open for her. It wasn't that easy. Joan had been grinding for years, performing in stage shows, competing in dance contests, putting herself out there, anything to be seen. And finally, she caught the right pair of eyes. An MGM talent scout happened to see her perform and thought she was interesting and talented enough to be a star, so he made her an offer. That was her ticket in. However, the story doesn't just end there. Getting through the doors of Hollywood and actually making it were two totally different things. So while it is true that MGM signed her to a contract, let's just say they weren't exactly rolling out the red carpet for her. You see, back then, studios signed a ton of young actresses, hoping one or two would stick, and Joan wasn't exactly promising compared to the other young actresses who were signed. Not promising yet. To them, she was just another pretty face, one of the many starlets who might get a small role here and there before fading into the background. No one was betting on her to be the next big thing. In fact, some higher-ups at the studio even considered her second-rate. They basically thought she was disposable. But here's the thing about Joan. She didn't care what people thought of her. She knew what she was capable of. And if MGM wasn't going to make her a star, she'd make herself one. Struggles of a young starlet. Just because Joan Crawford made it to Hollywood didn't mean she had it made. Far from it. She wasn't an overnight sensation. MGM barely knew what to do with her, so they threw her in minor roles, mostly as a background dancer or the pretty girl who had a few forgettable lines. And here's the kicker. Even with the small roles and the sparse lines, she almost got dropped from the studio. That's right. They took one look at her and thought she wouldn't be missed. Little did they know this same Joan Crawford, who would later dominate the screen, steal every scene, and become one of the biggest stars of all time. With all that was going on, most people would have been crushed. Others would have packed their bags and gone home. But Joan had a lot of resilience in her. She refused to be invisible. She knew she needed to stand out or she would wash out, and if she wasn't naturally standing out, she was going to make herself stand out. In a bid to save her career, she threw herself into acting lessons, studying every little thing that could help her get better: her voice, her posture, her expressions. She watched the greats, took notes, practiced in front of mirrors. She refined her dancing skills even further, making sure she was the best one in the room. And when she wasn't improving her craft, she was working the Hollywood scene, building relationships, making herself known. But here's where it gets really interesting. Joan Crawford knew Hollywood wasn't just about talent, it was about image. And so, she reinvented herself completely. She changed everything: her hair, her style, her attitude. Gone was that little girl, Lucille Lauren, the struggling one from Texas. In her place, Joan Crawford, glamorous, confident, untouchable. She developed that signature Crawford look, those strong cheekbones, those expressive eyes, the unmistakable presence. She built herself into someone unforgettable. And once she had that, people had to pay attention. Hollywood may not have believed in her at first, but Joan made damn sure they would never underestimate her again. The breakthrough role. By the early 1940s, Hollywood was slowly starting to turn its back on Joan Crawford. She had spent years playing the glamorous, feisty young woman in dozens of films. But now, the industry was moving on. New faces were taking over, and suddenly, Joan wasn't the it girl anymore. Studios whispered that she was washed up, that her best years were behind her. In a terrible turn of events, MGM, yes, the same studio she had fought so hard to prove herself to, eventually let her go. For most stars, this would have been a sign to quit and move on to other things. But Joan wasn't most stars. She wasn't about to fade away quietly. She knew she still had more to give, and she was willing to do whatever it took to prove she wasn't done. Enter Mildred Pierce, a role that most young actresses would give an arm and a leg for. It wasn't just another role, it was the role. A meaty, dramatic part that required real depth, not just a pretty face. If she got this role and nailed it, it would definitely put her on the map and have all the important eyes in Hollywood looking at her. It was a role that could change her entire life. But what's even more interesting is what the role meant to Crawford herself. It was about a woman who had been beaten down by life, but refused to break. Sound familiar? That's because Joan was Mildred in real life. She lived that struggle, and the role would be perfect for her. But again, in Hollywood, things aren't all rosy. Warner Brothers straight up didn't want her. To them, she was just a relic of the past, a former glamour queen who wasn't serious enough for a part like this. They wanted someone else, someone fresher, newer, someone they believed would be a better fit. So that was the end, right? Wrong again, because what did Joan do? She fought. She campaigned hard for the role, auditioned for it, and proved she had the chops. She wanted it so bad, it was hard to deny her, and so she got the role. She put every ounce of herself into that performance, delivering raw emotion, grit, and vulnerability in a way that no one expected. And so when Mildred Pierce hit the screen in 1945, it shattered expectations. Critics raved, the audience was blown away. Joan was back and she was bigger than ever. But then came the moment that changed everything. It was Oscar night, and the category for Best Actress was called up. After a tense few seconds, Joan's name rang through the halls. It was her. She had just won the Oscar for Best Actress. But you won't believe what Joan did. In true Hollywood fashion, she made the moment even more legendary by not attending the ceremony. It may have been nerves, superstition, or just pure Joan Crawford drama, but she stayed home, only to accept the Oscar from her bed while photographers captured the moment. But make no mistake, this win wasn't just about the trophy. It was about redemption. It was proof that no matter how many times Hollywood tried to write her off, she would always come back stronger. From that night on, Joan was more than just a movie star. She was a top actress, a force. And if Hollywood hadn't learned by now, They were about to never underestimate Joan Crawford. Fruits of her labor. After Mildred Pierce turned Joan Crawford into an Oscar-winning powerhouse, you'd think Hollywood would finally give her the respect she had been fighting for her entire career. And for a little while, they did. She had proven herself. She wasn't just a glamorous starlet, she was a serious actress. But in Hollywood, success doesn't guarantee longevity. The industry moves fast, and even after winning the biggest award an actress could dream of, Joan still had to hustle to keep her place at the top. When she left MGM, it wasn't just about finding a new studio, it was about redefining herself. Warner Brothers saw what she had done with Mildred Pierce, and they knew they had something special. So, they gave her a contract, but it wasn't just handed to her, Joan earned it. And once she was in, she made sure that every role she took solidified her as one of the best in the business. Her first big film after Mildred Pierce was Humoresque in 1946, a drama where she played a wealthy, sophisticated woman who falls in love with a struggling violinist, played by John Garfield. Now, this wasn't some lightweight romance, it was intense. Joan's character was complicated, tragic, and deeply emotional. And she delivered. If anyone thought Mildred Pierce was a fluke, Humoresque proved them wrong. Her chemistry with Garfield was electric, and her performance was filled with that raw, heartbreaking quality that made her unforgettable. Then came Possessed in 1947, and this particular film was next level. Joan played a woman struggling with severe mental illness, obsessed with a man who doesn't love her back, spiraling into paranoia and madness. And as always, she owned that role. She took every ounce of emotion she had and poured it into that performance, showing just how much range she really had. And Hollywood noticed. She earned another Academy Award nomination, proving that she wasn't just riding on the success of Mildred Pierce, she actually knew her stuff. But she wasn't stopping there. The late 40s saw her starring in one powerful role after another. There was Daisy Kenyon, 1947, where she played a woman caught in a love triangle with two very different men, played by Henry Fonda and Dana Andrews. It wasn't just a typical romance, it was deep, layered, and full of emotional weight. Joan played Daisy as independent and strong-willed, proving that she wasn't just the damsel in distress type, she was a woman who made her own choices. And then came Flamingo Road in 1949, where she played a tough, ambitious woman trying to escape her past and build a better life. This film had everything: politics, power struggles, romance, and Joan was at the center of it, commanding every scene. By the time the 1950s rolled around, Joan Crawford wasn't just a star, she was a legend. She had fought for every role, refused to let Hollywood box her into one type of character, and proved over and over again that she could handle anything. She was no longer just the ambitious young woman from her early MGM days. She was Joan Crawford, an actress who had reinvented herself, defied the odds, and built a career that was stronger than ever. And the best part? She wasn't even close to being finished. But as she was about to learn, Hollywood was full of shocking challenges. The Good Fight. After years of acting, Crawford wasn't young anymore. She wasn't the cute girl dancing her way through movies. And worst of all, she was a woman in a business that was run by men. Now here's the thing about Joan Crawford. She didn't just survive in a male-dominated industry. She outlasted most of the men running it. While a lot of actresses saw their careers nosedive after 40, Joan stayed relevant for decades. How, you may ask? Well, she adapted. She played the Hollywood game better than anyone else. She mastered self-promotion and knew how to keep people talking. She carefully managed her image, making sure every magazine cover, every public appearance, every interview reminded the world that Joan Crawford was still Joan Crawford. And when the roles started drying up, she reinvented herself again. She leaned into darker, edgier characters. She went from playing ambitious young women to powerful, complex older ones. She embraced film noir, and later, when the studio system started crumbling and actresses of her era were being forgotten, she jumped into horror with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and proved again that she was here to stay. Hollywood had tried to write her off so many times. They thought they could control her, discard her, forget her, But Joan Crawford didn't just survive Hollywood's brutal system, she beat it. The ultimate blueprint. If you wanted to last in Hollywood, really last, you studied Joan. She showed every actress that came after her exactly how it was done. And let's be real, Hollywood loves to chew women up and spit them out the second they're not young, fresh, or easily controllable. But Joan refused to let the industry define her. She flipped the script, took control of her own story, and showed everyone that reinvention wasn't just possible, it was necessary. Look at how she navigated her career. When she started, she was the flapper girl, all energy and youthful ambition. Then she evolved into the stylish, independent career woman, playing roles that mirrored her own rise to power. When that wasn't enough to keep her on top, she leaned into deeper, more dramatic characters, flawed, complex women with real struggles. And when Hollywood tried to push her out in the 50s, she pivoted again, stepping into thrillers and even horror, proving she could command the screen in any genre. Her ability to adapt wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary. Actresses back then were expected to fit into a mold, and when they aged out of it, they were discarded. But Joan refused to be discarded. She made Hollywood find a place for her, again and again, and in doing so, she paved the way for future actresses to take charge of their own careers. Think about Meryl Streep, Viola Davis, Charlize Theron, actresses who refuse to be boxed in, who transform with every role, who have careers that evolve rather than fade. That kind of longevity, that kind of power, Joan set the standard. And then there's her image. This woman understood branding before branding was even a thing. She knew how to make herself unforgettable, not just in movies, but in the public eye. Everything from the way she dressed, to the way she posed in photographs, to the way she carried herself in interviews was carefully crafted. She wasn't just playing a star on screen, she became one in real life. Even today, Joan Crawford's name still carries weight. Her impact is everywhere. In the way actresses fight for better roles, in the way stars reinvent themselves instead of fading away, in the way Hollywood still tells stories about strong, complicated women. She did more than just survive Hollywood, she conquered it. And that's why, no matter how many years go by, Joan Crawford will always be remembered as one of the greatest to ever do it. He didn't come from a dynasty of actors. He wasn't groomed for stardom. He was just another hopeful grinding away in small theater productions, barely getting noticed. And yet, this so-called untrained actor would go on to lead some of the most iconic, grand-scale blockbusters in Hollywood history, from The Ten Commandments to Ben-Hur, films so massive they're still legendary decades later. How did he do it? How did a stage extra with no classical training rise to become the face of biblical epics and historical dramas? And more importantly, how did he outshine actors who spent their entire lives preparing for roles like these? Humble beginnings. Charlton Heston's journey to Hollywood greatness wasn't exactly the polished, textbook rise of a classically trained actor. He wasn't molded in the elite drama schools of London or Broadway's finest institutions. There were no Shakespearean workshops, no method acting gurus shaping his craft. Instead, he relied on something far more raw: instinct, presence, and a voice that could command an entire battlefield. Born in 1923 as John Charles Carter in Evanston, Illinois, Heston's early years were spent in a quiet, rural setting after his family moved to Michigan. It was the kind of upbringing that built resilience, long days outdoors, isolation that fostered a deep inner world, and a fascination with storytelling that led him to books and theater. So how did he get into acting in the first place? Well, high school was where it all began. He got his first real taste of acting, stepping onto the stage, and right there and then, he first discovered a natural affinity for performance. But unlike many future Hollywood stars who dreamed of the big screen from childhood, Heston's journey wasn't born out of an obsession with movies. It was the power of the stage, the ability to transform into someone else that hooked him. That's what he fell in love with. But being passionate about acting is really not enough. You needed a clear path to achieve that goal, and it was no easy task. And sadly, all odds were stacked against him. He didn't come from a family of actors or have industry connections. However, what he did have was a commanding presence, even as a young man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing eyes that carried intensity. And then, of course, there was his voice, deep, authoritative, the kind that made you stop and listen. Little did he know these traits would later define his career, but at the time, they were just raw ingredients waiting to be shaped. But remember, he had the acting bug in him and wanted to be on stage so bad? Well, he went on and attended Northwestern University, where he studied drama. His closest brush with formal training, but the war interrupted his education. So, like many young men of his generation, he joined the military during World War II, serving as a radio operator and aerial gunner in the Army Air Forces. This experience gave him something invaluable: discipline. Years later, when he was charging through massive battle sequences in Ben-Hur or leading slaves to freedom in the Ten Commandments, that military background lent authenticity to his performances. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. After the war, Heston didn't have a roadmap to Hollywood success. He and his wife, Lydia Clark, who was also an aspiring actress, moved to New York and took whatever work they could find. No glamorous movie deals, no silver spoon treatment, just a young couple grinding it out, trying to make something happen. Heston took on small theater roles, live television gigs, anything that put him in front of an audience. He worked backstage, built sets, and even posed for art classes just to make ends meet. Then came a small but crucial break: live television. Back in the late 1940s and early 1950s, live television dramas were the perfect training ground for actors who weren't formally schooled in the craft. There were no retakes, no edits, just raw, real-time performances that forced actors to be sharp. Heston found himself cast in several of these productions, standing out due to his sheer presence and natural gravitas. He may not have had the refined polish of classically trained actors, but he had something else: believability. It wasn't long before Hollywood took notice. He was cast in Dark City in 1950, a low-budget noir film that served as his first major role. While the film didn't make him an overnight star, it proved one thing: this guy belonged on the big screen. More roles trickled in, but it was his next step that would cement his path to superstardom. What happened next? A fateful meeting with one of Hollywood's most powerful directors, a bold casting decision that defied convention, and the beginning of Charlton Heston's reign as the king of historical epics. The breakthrough role. By the mid-1950s, even though Charlton Heston had carved out a solid career in Hollywood, he was still far from being a household name. But that all changed when he landed the role of a lifetime, Moses in the Ten Commandments in 1956. Remember, though, he wasn't a classically trained Shakespearean actor like many of his contemporaries. He was a little rough around the edges. He hadn't honed his craft on prestigious theater stages or studied under legendary acting coaches. But that did not seem to matter, because somehow he was about to take on one of the most iconic, larger-than-life roles in film history, and he absolutely owned it. So how did Heston, an actor with no formal training, land a role that other seasoned, classically trained actors would have killed for? Well, that's where Cecil B. DeMille comes in. The legendary director known for his grand, extravagant epics, DeMille had a vision for the Ten Commandments. He didn't just want a good actor for Moses, he wanted someone who looked and felt biblical. Someone who could make audiences believe they were witnessing a prophet, a leader of men, a force of nature. Heston, with his towering presence, piercing gaze, and deep, commanding voice, was a perfect fit. There's even an old Hollywood legend that DeMille made his decision based on Heston's striking resemblance to the statue of Moses sculpted by Michelangelo. Whether or not that's true, it's undeniable that Heston had the physical and vocal power to bring the role to life. While some actors could deliver a technically perfect performance, Heston delivered something even more important: conviction. You didn't just watch him as Moses, you believed he was Moses. But make no mistake, this wasn't just another acting job. The Ten Commandments was one of the biggest, most ambitious productions in Hollywood history. The scale was unfathomable. Thousands of extras, massive sets built in the Egyptian desert, and special effects that were groundbreaking for their time. Everything about the film was designed to be epic in the truest sense of the word, and Heston was right in the middle of it all. The weight of the production rested heavily on his shoulders, playing Moses beyond just about reciting lines or looking imposing. It was about embodying a spiritual leader, a revolutionary, a man torn between two worlds. Heston had to carry scenes of deep emotional intensity. From Moses' transformation from an Egyptian prince to a prophet, to his legendary moments atop Mount Sinai. His ability to hold the screen with sheer presence made the film work. Then came the pressure of expectation. DeMille's 1923 silent version of The Ten Commandments had already been a massive success. This new version was supposed to be bigger, grander, and more unforgettable than anything Hollywood had ever attempted. If Heston's performance fell flat, the whole film would crumble, but he didn't just rise to the occasion, he dominated it. His booming delivery of lines like "Let my people go" became the stuff of cinematic legend.
Let my people go. Slaves are mine.
The film premiered in 1956, and audiences were blown away. Heston's Moses wasn't just a biblical figure, he was a force of nature, delivering one of the most iconic performances in movie history. The film became a monumental box office success, solidifying Heston as Hollywood's new king of epics. And this was just the beginning, because next up, he would take on a role that would push him to his absolute limits, physically, mentally, and professionally. A role that would require months of brutal training and see him performing some of the most dangerous stunts in film history. The movie? Ben-Hur. The moment that would cement Heston as one of the greatest leading men of all time. The ultimate test. By the late 1950s, Charlton Heston was already a towering presence in Hollywood, thanks to The Ten Commandments. But believe it or not, regardless of how challenging the role of Moses was, it was not even the role that really tested him and pushed him to the limits. That role would be the Ben-Hur in 1959. It was not like the biblical epic he starred in. This one became the film of the decade, a movie so ambitious, so demanding, that it could either make or break an actor. And for Heston, it would become the defining performance of his career. So how did he land the role of Judah Ben-Hur, a character that required not just acting chops but physical endurance, grit, and the ability to pull off one of the most dangerous action sequences ever put on film? Hollywood heavyweights were considered, but director William Wyler saw something in Heston that no one else had, a raw, commanding energy, a man who didn't need classical training to dominate the screen. Unlike other actors who delivered refined theatrical performances, Heston had something more primal. He looked like a warrior. He moved like a man who had fought and suffered, and that was exactly what the role needed. But getting cast was the easy part. The real challenge was what came next. Ben-Hur was a massive undertaking. The film had a budget of $15 million, a fortune in 1959, and took years to plan. The sets were enormous, the costumes lavish, and the expectations sky-high. But nothing compared to the infamous chariot race scene, the sequence that would go down as one of the most legendary moments in film history. Most actors, especially the ones trained in traditional stagecraft, would have let a stunt double handle the action. Not Heston. Instead of relying on professionals, he trained for months to master the art of chariot racing. Think about that for a second. A man with no prior experience in racing, no classical training in movement or stage combat, was about to take on one of the most dangerous action sequences Hollywood had ever attempted, and he did it. The preparation was brutal. Heston spent weeks in Rome, training with actual chariots, learning how to control 4 horses at once, how to make sharp turns without flipping over, how to look fearless while riding at breakneck speeds. The race itself was filmed over 5 weeks, with no CGI, no modern safety measures, just real horses, real chariots, and real danger. And through it all, Heston was right there in the thick of it, gripping the reins, pushing himself beyond his limits. His efforts paid off. The chariot race became one of the most electrifying sequences ever captured on film. Every shot was filled with real danger, real dust, real adrenaline. And Heston? He looked like he was born for this moment. No actorly pretense, no stage-trained stiffness, just sheer, unfiltered presence. When he crossed that finish line, he wasn't just playing Ben-Hur, he was Ben-Hur. The film shattered records. Ben-Hur won 11 Academy Awards, a record that stood for nearly 40 years. Heston took home the Oscar for Best Actor, cementing his place as one of the most iconic leading men in Hollywood history. And the best part? He did it his way. No classical training, no prestigious theater background, just instinct, determination, and sheer force of will. While others studied technique, Heston lived it. He wasn't just an actor, he was a force of nature. Hollywood's hero. After Ben-Hur, Charlton Heston was Hollywood's go-to guy for epic, larger-than-life roles. If a film needed a warrior, a king, a revolutionary, or a man whose presence alone could command an entire screen, Heston was the guy directors called. He had this undeniable gravitas, this sense of authority and conviction that made audiences believe they were watching something legendary. And Hollywood, never one to ignore a winning formula, kept casting him in some of the biggest films of the era. Take El Cid in 1961, for example. It wasn't enough that Heston had already played Moses and Judah Ben-Hur. Now he was stepping into the shoes of Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, the legendary Spanish warrior known as El Cid. This was another massive, sweeping epic, packed with grand battles, political intrigue, and the kind of heroic speeches only someone like Heston could deliver. And just like before, he embodied the role. He made sure his characters had depth. His El Cid wasn't just a fighter. He was a man of honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. That was the magic of Heston. He didn't just look the part, he made you feel the weight of these historical figures. But just when it seemed like he was destined to spend his career in togas and armor, Heston flipped the script. The 1960s and 70s saw Hollywood shifting toward more modern and experimental storytelling. Epics were falling out of fashion, but Heston wasn't about to let himself become outdated. Instead, he reinvented himself, and in doing so, he helped redefine sci-fi and dystopian cinema. And that's where Planet of the Apes in 1968 comes in. This was unlike anything he had done before. No swords, no historical figures, just a bleak, bizarre, and wildly ambitious sci-fi film where he played an astronaut stranded on a planet ruled by apes. This could have easily been a goofy B-movie, but Heston's presence grounded the entire film. His character, George Taylor, was cynical, broken, and desperate to survive. And that final scene where he collapses in front of the half-buried Statue of Liberty, realizing he's been on Earth all along? That's pure cinema history. Then came Soylent Green in 1973, another dystopian classic. Heston was just a gritty detective in a nightmarish, overpopulated future, and yet he still commanded the screen. His delivery of the iconic line, "Soylent Green is people,"
Soylent Green is people!
became one of the most legendary moments in film history. Even in a bleak, low-budget thriller, Heston made sure the impact was massive. That was his real gift. He wasn't just playing action heroes. He was playing thinkers, rebels, leaders. His characters weren't just physically powerful, they were mentally and morally imposing, the kind of men who stood for something bigger than themselves. That's why his performances still resonate today. Whether he was parting the Red Sea, leading a chariot race, or uncovering the dark secret of a dystopian future, Heston didn't just play the role, he became the role. Political juggernaut. Charlton Heston may have been best known for playing towering, heroic figures on screen, but off-screen he wasn't afraid to stand up for what he believed in, even when it wasn't the popular thing to do. Back in 1956, he campaigned for Adlai Stevenson in the presidential election, leaning more liberal at the time. When John F. Kennedy ran in 1960, Heston wanted to support him too, but filming El Cid in Spain kept him out of the political arena. That didn't stop him from taking a stand where it mattered, though. In 1961, when a segregated theater in Oklahoma was set to premiere El Cid, Heston reportedly joined a picket line outside the theater in protest. He never mentioned this particular incident in his autobiography, but he did write about traveling to Oklahoma City to picket segregated restaurants, a move that left the film's producers, allied artists, pretty unhappy. But Heston didn't care. He wasn't about to let the studio or anyone tell him to sit down and be quiet when something this important was at stake. Then came 1963, the year of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. This wasn't just another Hollywood star showing up for the cameras. Heston was right there, marching alongside Martin Luther King Jr. He later pointed out that he had been involved in the civil rights movement long before Hollywood found it fashionable. And honestly, he had a point. By 1964, Heston supported Lyndon B. Johnson for president, especially since Johnson had pushed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 through Congress despite massive opposition from Southern Democrats. That same year, when California tried to roll back fair housing laws with Proposition 14, Heston publicly opposed it, making it clear that he wasn't just a guy who played heroes, he was willing to be one in real life too. But Charlton Heston's political journey was anything but predictable. Back in the 1960s, he was still on the liberal side of things, marching for civil rights and even backing Hubert Humphrey in the 1968 presidential election. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. In his 1995 autobiography, In the Arena, Heston reflected on a moment that changed everything. One day, while driving back from the set of The Warlord, he spotted a Barry Goldwater for President billboard with the slogan, "In your heart, you know he's right." And just like that, something clicked. He thought to himself, "Son of a bitch, he is right." That moment set him on a new political path, one that would eventually make him one of the most outspoken conservative voices in Hollywood. At first, though, he wasn't all in on everything conservative. After Robert F. Kennedy's assassination in 1968, Heston actually supported gun control, teaming up with Gregory Peck, Kirk Douglas, and James Stewart to back President Lyndon B. Johnson's Gun Control Act of 1968. The White House even personally reached out to him to help push it forward, but his stance on guns didn't stay that way for long. Looking back, Heston later said that supporting Goldwater was the turning point that led him to oppose gun control laws. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was the beginning of the shift that would eventually make him the president of the NRA decades later. The end in sight. His final public appearance came in July 2003, when he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President George W. Bush. By 2005, reports surfaced that his health was deteriorating rapidly. His family and friends were stunned at how much he had changed, and some days he was barely able to get out of bed. Then, on April 5, 2008, Charlton Heston passed away at his Beverly Hills home. He was 84 years old. His wife, Lydia, his partner of an incredible 64 years, was right by his side. His family didn't initially disclose the cause, but a month later, it was revealed that he had died of pneumonia. A week later, on April 12, 2008, 250 mourners gathered at St. Matthew's Church in Pacific Palisades, the same church Heston had attended since the 80s. The guest list was a testament to his legacy: Arnold Schwarzenegger, Olivia de Havilland, Keith Carradine, Tom Selleck, Pat Boone, Rob Reiner, Christian Bale, and even Oliver Stone, who had cast Heston in Any Given Sunday. Hollywood always had shining stars, but beneath the surface lies a darker side, a history marked by manipulation, betrayal, and cruelty. Some actresses didn't just play villains on screen, they brought their ruthlessness into real life. From feuds that destroyed careers to schemes that went far beyond the cameras, their actions weren't just scandalous, they were downright chilling. But who were these women, and what made them cross the line? Norma Shearer. She was a stunning, poised actress at the top of her game in the 1930s, but with a little secret weapon up her sleeve: her husband, Irving Thalberg, the head honcho of MGM, the most powerful studio at the time. Being married to the boy wonder of Hollywood meant Norma wasn't just any actress. She practically had a direct line to the casting couch, and not in the way you'd think. Here's where it gets juicy. Norma was accused of using her marital connection to snag roles that other actresses were gunning for, sometimes ruthlessly. Take Joan Crawford, for instance. She and Norma were in a not-so-subtle battle for the spotlight. Joan once said, "How can I compete with Norma? She sleeps with the boss." It wasn't just Joan, though. Myrna Loy, another MGM star, also felt the sting of Norma's influence. Loy believed she lost roles because Norma had first dibs on the juiciest scripts. Norma wasn't just sitting around waiting for opportunities to fall into her lap, though. Oh no, she hustled. She even went so far as to commission provocative photos of herself to prove she could handle sexier, edgier roles like the lead in The Divorcee, a part that won her an Oscar. That move was bold, but it didn't win her many friends. Other actresses saw it as her playing dirty, using her privilege and connections to bulldoze her way to the top. And here's the kicker. Norma wasn't apologetic about any of it. She knew the power she had, and she used it shamelessly. To her, it was survival in a cutthroat industry. But to those on the losing end, like Joan and Myrna, it looked more like sabotage. Norma's career eventually faded, but her reputation as a savvy and selfish player in Hollywood's golden era is still part of her legacy. Was she a villain, or just a smart woman making the most of her circumstances? Depends on how you look at it. Either way, she left her mark, and not everyone was happy about it. Mae West. When you hear her name, you think of Hollywood's original queen of sass and self-promotion. Mae wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature, strutting through the entertainment world like she owned it. And honestly, she kinda did. But here's the thing. While Mae was bold, brilliant, and completely unforgettable, she had a way of making everything revolve around one person, Mae West. Mae was all about Mae, and she didn't care who got overshadowed along the way. In interviews, she'd dominate the conversation with her razor-sharp wit and trademark double entendres, barely giving anyone else a chance to shine. Co-stars, directors, they were just supporting characters in the Mae West show. She once said, "I never loved anybody as much as I loved myself." And let me tell you, she lived by that motto. On set, Mae insisted on having complete control over her lines, her wardrobe, and even how her scenes were shot. Directors found her exhausting, and co-stars often complained they were reduced to mere props. One infamous story involves a young Cary Grant, who got his big break in She Done Him Wrong because Mae thought he was hot. She literally plucked him out of obscurity and made him her leading man, but only because he made her look good. Mae even wrote most of her own scripts, which sounds impressive until you realize they were mostly vehicles for her to deliver one-liners and look fabulous. If a scene wasn't all about her, she'd either rewrite it or refuse to shoot it. Her co-stars? They were lucky if they got a word in edgewise. But here's the thing about Mae. She didn't care if people thought she was selfish. In fact, she leaned into it. She famously said, "I'm not afraid of criticism. I gave up that fear long ago." To Mae, being selfish wasn't a flaw. It was a survival strategy in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. So, love her or hate her, Mae West made Hollywood play by her rules. Was she selfish? Absolutely. But she was also a trailblazer, proving that a woman could run the show and own it without apologizing for a second. Marilyn Monroe. She had the looks, the charm, and that breathy voice that made her an icon, but behind all the glamour was a woman who didn't always play nice. Sure, Marilyn seemed like the sweet, shy girl next door, but in reality, she could be manipulative, selfish, and frustrating to deal with. Marilyn had a way of making everything about her, especially when it came to relationships. She charmed men with ease, but many of them, from Joe DiMaggio to Arthur Miller, felt like they were used as stepping stones or props to maintain her image. Marilyn craved adoration, And if she wasn't the center of attention, she'd find a way to turn the spotlight back on herself. She had a knack for keeping people hooked on her vulnerability, but some insiders felt it was all part of her act, a way to control those around her. On set, Marilyn's behavior drove directors and co-stars up the wall. She was notoriously late, sometimes by hours, leaving entire crews waiting while she finished getting ready or dealt with her personal dramas. Directors like Billy Wilder, who worked with her on Some Like It Hot, called her a nightmare to work with, even if the results were worth it. Studio executives lost money because of her delays, and she'd show up unprepared, forgetting her lines and making scenes take twice as long to shoot. What's wild is that Marilyn's antics weren't always accidental. Some believed she showed up late or caused chaos on purpose just to keep everyone off balance and ensure she remained the most important person in the room. She once said, "If I'd observed all the rules, I'd never have got anywhere." And honestly, that tells you everything you need to know. Still, Marilyn's charm was her secret weapon. Even when she upset people, they couldn't stay mad for long. She knew how to win people over with a pout or a laugh, and she leaned into that power whenever it suited her. Was she selfish? Probably. But in her world, where everyone wanted a piece of her, maybe it was the only way she knew how to survive. Lana Turner. She was known as the ultimate Hollywood glamour queen, famous for her beauty, charisma, and string of headline-grabbing romances. But beneath the shimmering exterior, Lana's personal life was a whirlwind of drama and questionable priorities, especially when it came to her role as a mother. Her focus on fame, love, and maintaining her image often left her daughter, Cheryl Crane, feeling like an afterthought in her life. Lana's love life was a tabloid dream, or nightmare, depending on how you look at it. She married 8 times to 7 different men, and each relationship seemed more chaotic than the last. Her constant search for love and validation often overshadowed her responsibilities as a mother. Cheryl, her only child, grew up in the middle of this storm, frequently shuffled to the side as Lana pursued her next romance or career move. The most infamous chapter of Lana's life, and the one that put her relationship with Cheryl under a microscope, was the demise of her abusive boyfriend, Johnny Stompanato, in 1958. Stompanato was a mobster who had been physically and emotionally abusive to Lana. One night, during a particularly violent argument between Lana and Johnny, 14-year-old Cheryl intervened. She grabbed a knife and stabbed Stompanato to protect her mother. The incident was ruled justifiable homicide, but it threw Cheryl into the spotlight and left her emotionally scarred. Many people blamed Lana for exposing Cheryl to such a toxic environment in the first place. Critics said Lana's pattern of prioritizing her own happiness, especially in her choice of volatile, dangerous men, put her daughter in harm's way. Cheryl later revealed that she felt neglected and isolated, living in the shadow of her mother's glamorous yet chaotic life. She described how Lana's obsession with her public image often left her feeling like an accessory, not a priority. Even after the Stompanato tragedy, Lana continued to focus on maintaining her movie star persona, often at the expense of her relationship with Cheryl. Their mother-daughter bond remained strained for years, with Cheryl struggling to find her own identity outside of Lana's shadow. Lana's story is a complex one. On the one hand, she was a woman navigating a male-dominated industry, doing whatever it took to stay on top. On the other hand, her relentless pursuit of fame and love left behind a trail of emotional wreckage, with her daughter paying the steepest price. It's a classic case of Hollywood glamour hiding a much darker reality underneath. Gloria Swanson. This woman wasn't just a Hollywood actress. She was a powerhouse. In the silent film era, she ruled the screen with her dramatic flair, extravagant wardrobe, and larger-than-life persona. But behind all of that, Swanson had a reputation for doing whatever it took to get ahead, even if it meant stepping on a few toes, or breaking hearts, along the way. Swanson's ambition was unmatched. She wasn't content with being just another actress. She wanted to be the star. And she wasn't afraid to manipulate the people around her to climb higher. One of the most talked about examples was her relationship with Joseph P. Kennedy, father of future President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy wasn't just her lover, he was also her financier, helping to fund her lavish lifestyle and her failing production company. Swanson benefited greatly from the relationship, but when the financial fallout came, Kennedy walked away relatively unscathed, while Swanson's career took a hit. Critics argue she used Kennedy as much as he used her, making their affair a textbook case of mutual manipulation. Professionally, Swanson had a way of alienating people. She was fiercely independent and demanded creative control over her projects, which wasn't common for actresses at the time. While her drive was admirable, it didn't win her many friends in the industry. Directors and producers often found her difficult to work with because she insisted on doing things her way, even if it caused friction on set. Her personal life was just as messy. Swanson married 6 times, and her relationships often ended in scandal or bitterness. She seemed to view her partners as stepping stones, prioritizing her career over building lasting connections. Her third husband, French aristocrat Henri de la Falaise, was a particularly dramatic case. Their marriage gave her an air of European sophistication that elevated her status, but it ended when the glitter faded, leaving yet another broken tie in her wake. By the time she starred in Sunset Boulevard, her iconic comeback role that mirrored her own life, Swanson's reputation as a self-serving, fiercely ambitious star had already been cemented. In many ways, her performance as Norma Desmond was more autobiographical than anyone realized. Was Gloria Swanson a villain? Not exactly. She was a woman in an unforgiving industry, fighting for control of her destiny. But her relentless ambition often left others hurt, discarded, or disillusioned. To some, she was a trailblazer. To others, she was simply ruthless. Tula Bankhead. If you thought the luxurious lifestyle and fame of old Hollywood was all about prim and proper behavior, Bankhead proved you wrong. She was loud, brash, and lived life on her own terms, often at the expense of everyone around her. Bankhead's reputation for wild behavior was legendary. She was known for her heavy drinking, drug use, and a string of fiery affairs that were as scandalous as they were public. But what really set her apart was her complete lack of a filter. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind, and when she did, it was often sharp, biting, and at times cruel. Her sharp tongue was both a weapon and a shield. Bankhead had a knack for making ruthless, cutting remarks about everyone, from co-stars to directors and even her own family. She once told a fellow actress, "I don't care what you do as long as you don't do it in the street and frighten the horses," a line that perfectly summed up her unapologetic nature. She would go out of her way to make people uncomfortable, whether by mocking others' looks or questioning their intelligence. It wasn't that she was insecure, quite the opposite. She just didn't care about anyone else's feelings. Her cruelty extended beyond just words, too. On set, Bankhead was known for being difficult to work with, often causing trouble during shoots. Directors found her hard to control, and she frequently showed up late or in no condition to work, thanks to her partying habits. Yet somehow she managed to still get roles, largely due to her outrageous charm and undeniable screen presence. Bankhead's personal life was just as turbulent. She had multiple love affairs, some with famous men and women, but never seemed to form lasting connections. She used people as disposable objects to satisfy her own needs, whether it was attention, companionship, or just a wild night of fun. For her, relationships were more about entertainment than genuine emotional connection. Yet, despite all the chaos, Tula Bankhead became a cult figure, beloved by some for her outlandishness and celebrated for living a life that most could only dream of in terms of freedom, albeit with consequences. She didn't give a damn about social norms or expectations, and while many found her antics tiresome or even cruel, others admired her boldness. She lived life on her own terms, and damn the consequences. In the end, Tula Bankhead was more than just a Hollywood star. She was a chaotic force of nature, a person who didn't care what others thought, and who would rather burn bridges than play nice. In a way, she was the perfect reflection of an industry that often valued the appearance of perfection over the messiness of real life. Barbara Stanwyck. She had a reputation for being a master at playing tough, no-nonsense characters on screen, but it seems she took a bit of that tough exterior into her personal life, too. Stanwyck was all about self-preservation. She knew how to build a career and maintain an image, but she also had a knack for cutting ties with people when they no longer served her interests. She wasn't the type to keep people around just for the sake of it, whether it was friends, co-stars, or even family. If someone no longer had a role in her life, they were quickly shown the door. There was no room for sentimentality in Stanwyck's world. Her fiercely private nature didn't help her popularity in Hollywood circles either. While other stars might bask in the spotlight and engage with their colleagues or fans, Stanwyck kept her distance, often keeping to herself or her closest circle of people. She had a strict keep your business to yourself policy, which sometimes made her seem aloof, standoffish, or even unapproachable. This detached nature didn't endear her to some of her co-stars or those working closely with her. Despite being a beloved and respected actress, she often isolated herself on set, leaving others to feel like they didn't have a real connection with her. There was a certain coldness to her, especially when it came to personal relationships. She had 2 marriages, both of which ended badly. The first to actor Frank Fay was rocky, marked by infidelity and tension, and after their divorce, Stanwyck's relationships with men were often seen as transactional rather than emotionally fulfilling. Stanwyck's approach to relationships wasn't just about keeping things private. It was about control. She was known for playing the role of the hard-nosed, calculating woman in many of her films, but it seems that role extended off-screen too. When she felt someone was a threat to her career, her personal space, or her privacy, they were quickly cut off. It wasn't about being mean. It was about protecting her territory, her image, and her career from anything that might cause her harm. Though many admired her for her unmatched acting talent, her emotional detachment and self-preserving nature left a trail of broken ties in Hollywood. While she was deeply respected for her work and known for being a professional on set, she wasn't the kind of person who would stick around for the long haul when it came to friendships or anything that didn't directly benefit her. Stanwyck's legacy is filled with glowing accolades for her skill, but her personal story is one of cold pragmatism and calculated decisions. She wasn't afraid to burn bridges if it meant advancing herself or protecting her space. Bette Davis. She was raw, unapologetic, and fiercely determined to maintain her star status no matter what it took. But in her relentless pursuit of stardom, Davis wasn't exactly concerned with how many bridges she burned or who got offended along the way. In fact, she seemed to almost revel in her reputation for being tough, demanding, and sometimes downright cruel. Her famous feuds and sharp tongue were as much a part of her legacy as her Oscar-winning performances. One of the most legendary and most vicious rivalries in Hollywood history was the one between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Their feud, which started in the 1930s, reached new heights when they were cast as the leads in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane in 1962. The 2 actresses couldn't have been more different, and their animosity went beyond mere professional competition. Davis once said, "She's a bitch, but she's my bitch." That pretty much sums up the animosity between them. There was no love lost, only cold, calculated contempt. The stories from the set of Baby Jane are legendary. They would constantly try to one-up each other, sabotaging each other's scenes and playing psychological games behind the scenes. It wasn't just on-screen drama. It was real, personal, and filled with spite. But Davis didn't reserve her sharp tongue for just one person. She was known for cutting people down, colleagues or not. She didn't care if she offended anyone with her direct and often hurtful criticisms. Directors, co-stars, and even studio heads could find themselves on the receiving end of Davis's biting remarks. She was a woman who demanded perfection from herself and everyone around her, and if you didn't measure up, you were fair game. If you couldn't take the heat, you were quickly discarded. It wasn't about making friends for Betty. It was about making sure she stayed on top, no matter the cost. Davis's famous outbursts and public criticism didn't make her popular in Hollywood, but they certainly kept her in the conversation. She was known for her bluntness and her refusal to play the game the way the studio system wanted her to. While many stars of the time were busy towing the line and maintaining a squeaky clean image, Davis made it clear she was going to do things her way, even if it meant stepping on a few toes along the way. Her story is one of fierce determination, but also one marked by a trail of offended colleagues and damaged relationships. Davis wasn't afraid to ruffle feathers if it meant maintaining her status as one of the greatest actresses in Hollywood, and while that made her unforgettable, it also made her a polarizing figure. In the end, Bette Davis proved that in the cutthroat world of Hollywood, it wasn't enough to just be talented. You also had to be willing to fight, even if it meant losing a few friends along the way. Joan Crawford. Here's what you may not know. Joan Crawford is one of the most infamous stars in Hollywood history, but not for the reasons most would expect. While she was adored by millions for her glamorous roles behind closed doors, Crawford's life was a storm of manipulation, control, and a relentless desire for success at any cost. Crawford was known for putting her career above everything else, family included. She often seemed to view her relationships, especially with her children, as mere extensions of her public image, which she worked tirelessly to maintain. But her personal life was far from ideal, and it wasn't long before rumors began to swirl about how she treated her family, especially her children. In her later years, her adopted daughter, Christina Crawford, famously penned a memoir called Mommy Dearest, in which she accused Joan of severe emotional and physical abuse. The book portrayed Crawford as a cold, controlling mother, and the revelations were shocking. Christina described Joan as a woman who expected perfection, punished her children for minor transgressions, and was a tyrant behind closed doors.
Come on in the house! Come on in before you catch your death.
She defied Hollywood's expectations and shattered its age-old stereotypes. An actress who faced a mountain of opposition yet changed the game forever.
I even loves him when his kisses got gin.
She wasn't just another face on the screen. She rewrote the rules, broke the mold, and left an indelible mark on the industry. How did she do it? What did she risk? Discover the fearless journey of the actress who challenged Hollywood and won. Hattie McDaniel, first of her kind. In the year 1940, history was made, and Hattie McDaniel had her name written in the sands of time for being the first African American ever to win an Oscar. But this victory did not come without its challenges. Hattie McDaniel was born on June 10, 1893, in Wichita, Kansas. Her parents were formerly enslaved people who had gained their freedom and moved west in search of a better life. Growing up in a large family, Hattie learned the value of hard work early on. Her father was a Civil War veteran, and her mother was a gospel singer, so music and performance were always a big part of her life. As a young woman, Hattie started performing in her brother's minstrel show, where she honed her skills as a singer and comedian. Her natural talent and captivating presence soon made her a popular figure. She also worked as a songwriter, penning several pieces that showcased her creative abilities. Despite the racial barriers of the time, Hattie was determined to make her mark in the entertainment world. One of her earliest notable songs was I Thought I'd Do It.
Several times I thought I'd do it, but I knew someday I'd do it.
A piece she both wrote and performed. This song, along with others she created during her vaudeville days, highlighted her ability to craft engaging and memorable lyrics. Hattie's songwriting was characterized by its wit and emotional depth, often drawing from her own experiences and observations. In the 1920s, Hattie decided to take a bold step and move to Hollywood. The film industry was booming, and she saw an opportunity to expand her career. However, breaking into Hollywood was no easy feat for an African-American woman. The roles available were limited and often steeped in stereotypes. Regardless, Hattie persisted. Despite all the doors that were shut in her face and the rejections and occasional insults from directors and producers, Hattie just wouldn't give up. As Hattie transitioned to Hollywood, she also found opportunities to share her musical talents on the radio. In the early 1930s, she became one of the first African-American women to sing on the radio, performing live broadcasts that included her own songs. This exposure helped her gain a wider audience and showcased her versatility as both a performer and a songwriter. Her radio performances were well received, and she continued to write songs that resonated with listeners. Some of her songs from this period include Quittin' My Man Today and Daddy Blues, which captured the spirit of the blues genre and highlighted her lyrical prowess. Regarding her acting career, soon enough she realized that for an African-American woman to climb to the top, she would have to start from the deepest bottom, so she made the decision to stoop to conquer. Eventually, she landed her first major role in The Golden West, 1932, where she played a maid. Although the part was small, it was a significant step forward. She continued to take on similar roles in other films, including I'm No Angel, 1933, with Mae West, where her comedic timing and charm were evident. Little by little, she built a reputation in the industry, garnered a rich network of people, and continued to act alongside bigger actors and actresses in the industry, picking a thing or two from them along the way. Finally, her breakthrough came with her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind, 1939. Now, for one, the movie was incredibly controversial, but despite the controversy surrounding the film's portrayal of African Americans, Hattie's performance stood out. She infused the character with a sense of strength and warmth, earning her widespread acclaim. But not just that. People were so impressed with her role in the movie and how powerful and resonating it was, it earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Right there, Hattie McDaniel made history as the first African-American to win an Oscar. Now, at this point, one would think that her rise in the industry kept soaring higher and higher, but for Hattie, the challenges in her career were far from over. Even after her Oscar win, Hattie continued to work in Hollywood, but she faced ongoing challenges. The industry was slow to offer her roles that matched her talent. She often found herself typecast as a maid or servant. Nonetheless, she approached each role with professionalism and dedication, bringing dignity to even the most stereotypical characters. Some of her notable films include In This Our Life, 1942, Since You Went Away, 1944, and Song of the South, 1946. In these films, Hattie continued to demonstrate her versatility as an actress, often stealing scenes with her compelling performances. Regardless, Hattie's work ethic was legendary. She was known for her punctuality, professionalism, and positive attitude on set. Despite the systemic racism and limited opportunities, she never let these obstacles define her. Instead, she used her success to advocate for better roles and treatment for African American actors. On top of all these, Hattie's success as a songwriter and singer complemented her acting career. Her musical talents often enhanced her roles in films, allowing her to bring a unique dimension to her characters. For example, in the film Showboat, 1936, she performed the song Can't Help Lovin' Dat Man,
The chimney's smoking, the roof is leaking in.
showcasing her powerful voice and musical talent. Her ability to write and perform songs added to her appeal in Hollywood, making her a multi-talented artist who could seamlessly transition between different aspects of the entertainment industry. Jane Mansfield, the not-so-dumb blonde. Back in the golden age of Hollywood, and this is true a little bit even today, when the audience sees a beautiful blonde woman in a movie, the stereotype is usually that she is just a pretty face and nothing more. Marilyn Monroe was the embodiment of this stereotype, but when it came to Jane Mansfield, she broke it into a million pieces. Jane was born on April 19, 1933, in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, as Vera Jane Palmer. From an early age, she was determined to make her mark in the world. Her beauty, charm, and charisma set her apart, and she quickly developed a passion for performing. Jane was also highly intelligent, with an IQ reported to be around 163. This intelligence would later play a crucial role in how she shaped her career and public persona. Jane's journey to stardom began in high school, where she excelled in drama and music. After marrying her high school sweetheart, Paul Mansfield, she moved to Los Angeles in the early 1950s determined to become a Hollywood star. She studied drama at the University of Texas and then at UCLA, honing her craft and preparing for the big break she knew would come. Her early years in Hollywood were challenging. Like many aspiring actresses, she took on small roles and worked various jobs to make ends meet. And soon her persistence paid off as she began to build her career. Finally, her big break came in 1955 when she signed a contract with Warner Bros. And starred in the film The Girl Can't Help It, 1956. Her performance caught the attention of audiences and critics alike, and she quickly became one of Hollywood's most talked-about new stars. The rest of Jane's career was filled with memorable performances that showcased her talent and versatility. Some of her notable films include Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, 1957, where she played a parody of The Hollywood Starlet, and The Wayward Bus, 1957, where she demonstrated her range as an actress with a more dramatic role. Her performance in Promises, Promises, 1963, also garnered attention as she became the first major American actress to appear nude in a mainstream film. Beyond films, Jane was also a successful stage actress and nightclub performer. She headlined in Las Vegas and toured internationally, captivating audiences with her singing and comedic performances. Her stage presence was electrifying, and she knew how to command attention and leave a lasting impression. Despite her success, Jane faced numerous challenges. The dumb blonde stereotype she so cleverly manipulated also became a double-edged sword, limiting the types of roles she was offered. Hollywood often failed to recognize her true talent and intelligence, pigeonholing her into certain types of characters. Jane's personal life was equally tumultuous. She experienced several marriages and divorces and struggled with the pressures of maintaining her public image. Nevertheless, her resilience and determination never waned. She continued to work tirelessly, taking on various projects and reinventing herself as needed. Jane Mansfield was often compared to Marilyn Monroe, another blonde bombshell of the era. However, Jane was determined to distinguish herself. She embraced the dumb blonde stereotype, but did so with a twist. Behind her voluptuous figure and platinum blonde hair was a sharp mind and a savvy businesswoman. Jane's approach to her public persona was strategic and self-aware. She used her physical appearance to her advantage, drawing attention with her hourglass figure and glamorous style. But she also used her intelligence to manipulate this image, often playing up the dumb blonde stereotype in a way that was both ironic and humorous. She was known for making witty, self-deprecating remarks that hinted at her true intelligence. Jane Mansfield is remembered for subverting expectations and breaking stereotypes. She took a trope that often diminished women's intelligence and used it to her advantage, demonstrating a clever and self-aware manipulation of her image. By doing so, she challenged the industry's narrow definitions and opened the door for future actresses to embrace both their intelligence and beauty simultaneously. Lucille Ball, not your regular star. In old Hollywood, women were seen as mere actresses known for their beauty and perhaps talent. But Lucille Ball decided not to accept this stereotype. With her amazing business acumen, she built an empire and became the first woman to run a major television studio. Lucille Ball was born on August 6, 1911 in Jamestown, New York. From a young age, Lucille was drawn to the spotlight. She pursued acting despite many obstacles, demonstrating an early resilience that would define her career. Her journey to becoming one of the most influential figures in television history was filled with determination, talent, and a sharp business sense. Lucille Ball's early years in Hollywood were challenging. After moving to New York City in the late 1920s, she found work as a model and then ventured into acting. She moved to Hollywood in the 1930s, taking on various small roles in films. Despite her striking looks and talent, she struggled to find substantial roles and was often cast as the pretty sidekick or in minor parts. Her persistence paid off when she landed a contract with RKO Radio Pictures. During this time, she met and married Desi Arnaz, a Cuban band leader. The couple's dynamic partnership would later revolutionize television. In 1951, Lucille and Desi created the iconic television show I Love Lucy. The show was groundbreaking in many ways, showcasing Lucille's exceptional comedic talent. She played Lucy Ricardo, a lovable and mischievous housewife whose antics provided endless laughs. Her physical comedy, expressive face, and impeccable timing made her a household name. I Love Lucy was a massive success, becoming one of the most beloved shows in television history. It broke new ground by featuring a mixed-race marriage on screen, something nearly unheard of at the time. Lucille's talent for comedy and her ability to connect with audiences made her a trailblazer in the industry. Regardless of all these successes, Lucille Ball's path was not without challenges. She faced skepticism and resistance in an industry dominated by men. Her business acumen and ability to make strategic decisions were often underestimated. Despite these hurdles, she persevered, demonstrating resilience and a keen understanding of the entertainment business. Beyond her on-screen success, Lucille Ball was a shrewd businesswoman. In 1950, she and Desi Arnaz founded Desilu Productions. The company not only produced I Love Lucy, but also developed and produced many other successful television shows, including The Untouchables and Star Trek. Lucille's role in Desilu Productions was significant. After her divorce from Desi in 1960, she bought out his shares and became the first woman to run a major television studio. Under her leadership, Desilu continued to thrive, producing popular shows that defined the television landscape. Her work ethic was legendary. Lucille was known for her meticulous attention to detail and her hands-on approach to production. She was involved in every aspect of her shows, from writing and directing to editing and marketing. Her dedication and hard work set a standard for future generations of television producers. Lucille Ball broke the mold of the traditional female television star. She proved that women could be both funny and business savvy, challenging the industry's stereotypes and opening doors for future female entertainers and executives. Her success as a comedian and a businesswoman paved the way for women in television and beyond. Katherine Hepburn, the Lady Boss. Unlike the industry we have today, it was unheard of for an actress to not be extremely feminine and seductive in movies, but Hepburn did the exact opposite and was criticized for it. Katherine Hepburn was born on May 12, 1907, in Hartford, Connecticut. Growing up in a progressive and affluent family, Katherine was encouraged to be independent and strong-willed. Her mother, a suffragette and feminist, and her father, a prominent urologist, instilled in her the values of self-reliance and determination. These early influences would shape Katherine's approach to life and her career in entertainment. From a young age, Katherine was drawn to the performing arts. She was fascinated by the world of theater and film, often putting on plays for her family. Her interest in acting grew during her years at Bryn Mawr College, where she participated in numerous theatrical productions. Despite initial struggles with stage fright, her passion for acting never wavered. After graduating from college, Katherine pursued her acting career with determination. She began performing in regional theater and made her Broadway debut in the early 1930s. Her breakthrough came when she was cast in the Broadway play The Warrior's Husband, which showcased her talent and distinctive presence. Katherine's success on Broadway caught the attention of Hollywood. She signed a contract with RKO Pictures and made her film debut in A Bill of Divorcement, 1932, alongside John Barrymore. Her performance was well received, marking the beginning of a prolific film career. Despite her early success, Katherine faced significant challenges in Hollywood. Her refusal to conform to traditional feminine roles and her strong, independent persona often put her at odds with the expectations of the industry. She was labeled box office poison after a series of commercial failures in the late 1930s. Critics and studio executives doubted her appeal, and she faced a difficult period in her career. Undeterred by these setbacks, Katherine reinvented herself and made a triumphant comeback. She strategically bought the film rights to The Philadelphia Story, a play written specifically for her, and used it to showcase her talent. The film's success revitalized her career and re-established her as a top Hollywood star. After that, she went on representing the strong-willed woman she was in all of her roles. Soon enough, she became known for her portrayals of strong-willed, independent women, challenging the traditional feminine roles of her time. The way her roles all depicted her resilience was unusual for an actress at the time, and she began to get recognition and even awards for her distinguishing roles. In Morning Glory, 1933, Katherine played Ava Lovelace, a fiercely ambitious actress striving to make her mark in the theater world. Her portrayal of Ava's relentless pursuit of success and refusal to compromise on her dreams earned her the first of her 4 Academy Awards for Best Actress. In the 1938 screwball comedy Bringing Up Baby, she showcased her comedic talent and ability to play unconventional characters. She starred as Susan Vance, a free-spirited, quirky heiress who embarks on a series of hilarious misadventures with a straight-laced paleontologist played by Cary Grant. Despite the film's initial box office failure, it has since become a classic, and Katherine's performance as the irrepressible Susan highlighted her ability to bring strength and charm to her roles. The Philadelphia Story, 1940, was a pivotal film in Katherine's career. In it, she portrayed Tracy Lord, a wealthy and headstrong socialite navigating the complexities of love and societal expectations. Tracy's sharp wit, independence, and vulnerability made her a multidimensional character, and Katherine's performance earned her another Academy Award nomination. The film's success re-established her as a leading actress in Hollywood. In The African Queen, 1951, Katherine took on the role of Rose Sayer, a prim missionary who teams up with a rough-and-tumble boat captain, played by Humphrey Bogart. Rose's journey from a sheltered, reserved woman to a courageous and resourceful partner in their perilous adventure showcased Katherine's ability to convey strength and growth. Her performance demonstrated her versatility and earned her critical acclaim. Defying the Latina narrative. Rita Moreno was born on December 11, 1931, in Humacao, Puerto Rico, as Rosa Dolores Alvarillo. At the age of 5, she moved to New York City with her mother, seeking a better life. Growing up in a new country, Rita was captivated by the world of entertainment. She began taking dance lessons and performed in local theater productions, dreaming of a future on the big stage. Her talent and dedication quickly caught the eye of Broadway producers. At just 13, Rita made her Broadway debut in the play Skydrift. Her success on stage led to opportunities in Hollywood, and by the early 1950s, she was signed by MGM Studios. However, the path to stardom was not easy. Hollywood had very few roles for Latina actresses, and Rita was often cast in stereotypical parts that didn't showcase her full potential. Rita's big break came in 1961 when she was cast as Anita in the film adaptation of West Side Story. Her portrayal of Anita, a passionate and strong-willed Puerto Rican woman, was groundbreaking. She brought depth and authenticity to the role, challenging the simplistic and often negative stereotypes of Latina women in Hollywood. Her powerful performance earned her an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, making her the first Latina actress to win an Oscar. Despite this significant achievement, Rita still faced challenges in her career. After her Oscar win, she hoped for more diverse and substantial roles, but found herself pigeonholed into similar stereotypical characters. The industry's reluctance to move beyond typecasting was disheartening, but Rita's resilience and determination never wavered. In the years that followed, Rita continued to work in film, television, and theater, proving her versatility as an actress. She starred in films like The Night of the Following Day, 1968, and Carnal Knowledge, 1971, where she portrayed complex and multifaceted characters. On television, she made memorable appearances in shows like The Electric Company and Oz, further showcasing her range. Some old Hollywood stars were involved in shocking things that would leave the mouths of their fans open in awe. From being involved with the mafia to being a secret lesbian, some of these stars' double lives were far from ideal. Elizabeth Scott, the secret lesbian. Born Emma Mazzo, Scott's journey to Hollywood stardom began in the 1950s when the film industry decided to turn her into a glamorous icon. With a new American name and training in acting, dressing, and demeanor, all that was left was to change her name, and that was how the name Elizabeth Scott came about. On top of that, Paramount crafted a fake biography for her and always described her as beautiful, blonde, aloof, and alluring in press releases. They eventually molded her into a tough femme fatale, branding her as the Threat. Critics generally praised her performances, and she starred alongside some of Hollywood's leading men. However, things began to go south for Scott when gossip columns often noted her lack of a steady boyfriend and that none of her co-stars seriously dated her, which was unusual for the time when romantic flings between leading men and their co-stars were common, even if they were just for publicity. Scott, however, stayed out of those staged romances. It appeared odd, and so the media began to dig deeper. Scott worked steadily, though she faced stiff competition from Veronica Lake and Lauren Bacall, who also played tough, dangerous roles. She understood her place in Hollywood, beautiful but not as stunning as Lake, and talented but not quite as skilled as Bacall. She invested her money wisely, but her career faced a different kind of threat. As it turned out, she was a lesbian. While many male stars of the golden age of Hollywood were also gay, they often faced threats from studios but could find some solace in a discreet underground gay culture. Lesbians, however, were not so fortunate. They had to stay deeply in the closet, and the threats against them were severe. Some, like silent film star Alla Nazimova, manipulated young actresses through promises of career help, taking advantage of them regardless of their sexual orientation. Elizabeth Scott, however, had too much integrity to exploit other women. She often traveled to Paris, where there was more acceptance of her lifestyle, and even began dating Fried, an openly gay Parisian entertainer, but as far as Hollywood was concerned, she hid her real sexuality, keeping it a secret. The studio, however, didn't like her choice to date an openly gay person. If the news got back to America, it could end her career. But in the 40s and 50s, Americans got little news from Europe unless it was about the Cold War. So as long as Elizabeth Scott's secret life stayed in Paris, the studio allowed it. But whenever Scott returned to America, she would always seek comfort in the arms of high-class call girls who were lesbians also, because they were presumed to be discreet. This, she would soon find out, would be the biggest mistake she'd ever made. What she didn't know was that, sadly, many of Hollywood's top call girls had a second income source, selling stories to tabloids. Some even engaged in blackmail, but that's a different tale. In this day and age, there are stricter rules and laws guiding how papers and tabloids get their stories, but back in the 50s, papers would go to extreme lengths for a story. Even those who remember the National Enquirer's antics in the 80s, like destroying presidential candidate Gary Hart or sneaking reporters with mini-cameras into celebrity funerals, can't imagine the ruthlessness of 50s tabloids. The most ruthless paper in this regard was called Confidential. Publisher Robert Harrison made modern TV and web gossip look amateurish. His operations rivaled those of the FBI and the CIA. Confidential ruined enough lives to fill several books, and they had their sights on Scott due to her disinterest in men. For a while, they lacked enough dirt, but in 1954, they bought the address books of several popular Hollywood prostitutes. The magazine was ecstatic. An actor's name, address, and phone number in a call girl's little black book was enough to imply scandal. They disgraced male clients readily, but reserved special luridness for lesbians, given the magazine's male ownership. Scott became a target of insinuating articles. They couldn't push too far, though, since all they had was her name in the book. Still, Confidential kept digging. Eventually, they found a prostitute Scott trusted and liked, who had never sold information before. Tragically, this call girl recorded everything, and just like that, her double life was revealed to the whole world. John Garfield, The Dance of Communism. John Garfield, born Jacob Julius Garfinkel on March 4, 1913, in New York City, was one of Hollywood's most compelling actors, known for his rugged, everyman persona. His journey to stardom was marked by perseverance and talent, rising from humble beginnings to become a significant figure in American cinema. However, beneath his on-screen heroics and public persona, Garfield's life was marred by allegations of communist affiliations and rumored connections to the criminal underworld. Garfield's early life was challenging, growing up in the tough neighborhoods of New York's Lower East Side. His father struggled to provide for the family, and his mother passed away when he was just 7 years old. These hardships fostered resilience and determination in young Garfield, who found solace in acting. He honed his craft at the American Laboratory Theater and later joined the Group Theater, where he developed his distinctive naturalistic acting style. Garfield's breakthrough in Hollywood came with his performance in the 1938 film Four Daughters, which earned him his first Academy Award nomination. He quickly became known for his intense, brooding characters in films like The Postman Always Rings Twice, body and soul, and force of evil. His portrayals resonated with audiences, who saw in him a reflection of their own struggles and aspirations. Despite his success, Garfield's career and life took a dark turn in the late 1940s and early 1950s. During this period, America was gripped by the Red Scare, a widespread fear of communist influence in the country. Hollywood was a target. Many actors, writers, and directors were accused of communist sympathies. They were blacklisted from the industry. Garfield, known for his left-leaning political views and involvement in progressive causes, found himself under suspicion. In 1951, Garfield was subpoenaed to appear before the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, which was investigating communist infiltration in Hollywood. Garfield staunchly denied any communist affiliations and refused to name names, maintaining his integrity even under immense pressure. However, his refusal to cooperate with HUAC led to his blacklisting, effectively ending his career in major studio films. Adding to his troubles, Garfield was rumored to have connections to the criminal underworld. While much of this remains speculative, it's believed that his upbringing in the rough neighborhoods of New York and his association with certain figures in the entertainment industry brought him into contact with organized crime. These rumors, combined with his blacklisting, painted a contradictory picture of a man caught between his principles and the harsh realities of his time. Garfield's health began to deteriorate under the strain of these pressures. He suffered from a heart condition, exacerbated by the stress of being blacklisted and ostracized by the industry he loved. On May 21, 1952, at the age of 39, Garfield died of a heart attack. His death was a tragic end to a career and life that had promised so much. Rory Calhoun, the human sacrifice. Rory Calhoun was a minor but reliable movie actor whose career was handled delicately by the studios. Born Francis Timothy McCown, he endured a rough childhood marked by abuse. Dropping out of school, he fell into a life of crime and eventually went to prison for armed robbery. In 1943, at the age of 21, Calhoun's criminal activities caught up with him in a big way. He was arrested for breaking into a store and sentenced to 3 years in prison at the United States Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. This prison stint marked a turning point in his life. While serving time, he decided to reform and change the trajectory of his future. Upon his release, Calhoun took on a series of odd jobs, including working as a lumberjack and a cowhand. His rugged looks and physique eventually caught the attention of Hollywood talent agent Henry Wilson, who saw potential in the ex-convict. Wilson, who was known for transforming the images of his clients, suggested that McCown change his name to Rory Calhoun to help distance himself from his troubled past. Calhoun's criminal history was a closely guarded secret, especially as he began to find success in Hollywood. He made his film debut in 1944 and quickly rose to fame with roles in westerns and adventure films. Calhoun worked diligently to keep his past hidden, fearing that the revelation of his criminal activities would ruin his burgeoning career. Bugsy Siegel, producer by day, gangster by night. Bugsy Siegel, born Benjamin Siegel on February 28, 1906, in Brooklyn, New York, emerged as one of the most notorious gangsters in American history. His life was a fascinating blend of ruthless criminal activities and glamorous Hollywood aspirations, a juxtaposition that made his story all the more compelling. Growing up in the gritty streets of Brooklyn, Siegel quickly succumbed to a life of crime. By his teenage years, he had earned a fearsome reputation as an enforcer deeply involved in bootlegging, gambling, and murder. He co-founded the infamous Murder Inc., a group of contract killers that executed hits for the mob. Siegel's propensity for violence was legendary, earning him the nickname Bugsy, a moniker that alluded to his volatile and erratic nature. In the 1930s, seeking new opportunities and perhaps a bit of spark, Siegel moved to California. Here, he endeavored to expand his criminal empire while simultaneously attempting to break into the Hollywood scene. Los Angeles in the 1930s and 1940s was a playground for the rich and famous, a city where dreams were made and broken. Siegel, with his undeniable charisma and sharp sense of style, quickly found himself mingling with the stars. He attended high-profile parties and forged relationships with some of the biggest names in Hollywood, many of whom were blissfully unaware of the extent of his violent background. Siegel's charm and ambition led him to dream of becoming a movie producer. He invested in several films and tried to leverage his connections to gain a foothold in the industry. However, despite his efforts, his ventures into film production were met with limited success. Hollywood could not entirely shield him from his darker dealings. His friendships with celebrities were often superficial, as few truly understood the depths of his criminal activities. Despite the facade, Siegel's life remained steeped in danger and crime. He was instrumental in the development of the Las Vegas Strip, envisioning it as a gambling mecca that would cater to the wealthy elite. His project, the Flamingo Hotel, was an ambitious and costly venture that he hoped would secure his place in both the criminal underworld and American business history. Yet, the project was plagued by delays and financial mismanagement, leading to tension with his mob associates. In the end, his violent criminal background contrasted with his Hollywood aspirations, ultimately leading to his downfall. His lavish spending and the mounting costs of the Flamingo project drew the wrath of his mob partners. On June 20th, 1947, Siegel's double life came to a brutal end when he was shot and killed in his Beverly Hills home. Barbara Stanwyck, the alleged spy. Barbara Stanwyck, born Ruby Catherine Stevens on July 16, 1907 in Brooklyn, New York, is remembered as one of Hollywood's most versatile and powerful actresses. Her on-screen presence was formidable, and she carved out a legendary career in film and television. However, beneath the polished exterior of this beloved star lay a life entangled with underworld figures and covert activities, particularly during the tumultuous era of the Red Scare. Stanwyck's rise to stardom was marked by resilience and determination. She began her career in the entertainment industry as a chorus girl before transitioning to acting. Her breakthrough came in the 1930s, and she quickly became known for her roles in films such as Stella Dallas, Double Indemnity, and Christmas in Connecticut. Her performances were characterized by a blend of strength, vulnerability, and an undeniable magnetism that captivated audiences. Despite her success, Stanwyck's personal life was far from serene. She had a series of rocky relationships and marriages, most notably with actor Robert Taylor. The couple's union was often described as a marriage of convenience, orchestrated more for Hollywood publicity than genuine affection. It was during this time that Stanwyck's connections to underworld figures began to surface. Rumors of Stanwyck's associations with the mob circulated within Hollywood circles. She was said to have formed friendships with notorious gangsters who were drawn to her tough, no-nonsense persona. These relationships reportedly protected her. They also gave her power. This was unusual for women in the industry at that time. Some speculated that her ties to the underworld provided her with leverage and security in an industry rife with exploitation and power struggles. The Red Scare of the 1940s and 1950s was even more dramatic in Stanwyck's life. This period, marked by intense anti-communist sentiment and widespread fear of subversion, saw many in Hollywood accused of communist sympathies and blacklisted. Stanwyck, known for her staunch anti-communist views, became an active participant in the industry's efforts to root out alleged communists. However, her involvement in these activities was a bit deeper than she let on. Publicly, she was a vocal supporter of anti-communist organizations, including the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, MPA, a group of conservative Hollywood figures who worked closely with the House Un-American Activities Committee, CHUAC, to identify and denounce suspected communists within the industry. But behind the scenes, according to rumors, Stanwyck's actions were secretly more covert. She was rumored to have engaged in secret activities, providing information on colleagues and participating in covert operations aimed at exposing and undermining communist influences in Hollywood. Her staunch anti-communist stance and willingness to collaborate with authorities earned her both admiration and animosity among her peers. Dorothy Kilgallen, the JFK investigator. Dorothy Kilgallen was a renowned journalist, television personality, and investigative reporter whose career spanned from the 1930s until her untimely death in 1965. Born on July 3, 1913, in Chicago, Illinois, Kilgallen grew up in a family deeply rooted in journalism. Her father, James Kilgallen, was a respected reporter, and it was through his influence that Dorothy developed a passion for news and storytelling. Kilgallen's career took off in the 1930s when she began writing a widely read column, The Voice of Broadway, for the New York Journal-American. Her column covered a mix of celebrity gossip, social commentary, and hard news, and it became immensely popular. She had a sharp wit and an eye for detail, which made her a standout in the competitive world of journalism. In addition to her column, Kilgallen was a regular panelist on the popular television quiz show What's My Line, which brought her further fame and recognition. However, it was Kilgallen's work as an investigative journalist that truly set her apart. Her most controversial and dangerous assignment came in the early 1960s, when she began investigating the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Kilgallen was deeply skeptical of the official account provided by the Warren Commission, which concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in the assassination. She believed there was more to the story and was determined to uncover the truth. Kilgallen's investigation into the JFK assassination was both extensive and perilous. She conducted numerous interviews, gathered confidential information, and meticulously analyzed the evidence. Her efforts led her to Jack Ruby, the nightclub owner who famously killed Oswald. Kilgallen was one of the few journalists to interview Ruby while he was in custody, and she reportedly obtained significant information that contradicted the official narrative. As she delved deeper into the assassination in a bid to get to the bottom of things, Kilgallen reportedly veered off the moral highway and began engaging some dangerous individuals while acting like she was being straight and narrow. These included underworld figures and people with potential ties to the intelligence community. On one hand, she seemed to be getting good information, but on the other, her pursuit of the truth placed her in precarious situations as she navigated a web of secrecy, conspiracy, and potential threats to her safety. In November 1965, Kilgallen was found lifeless in her Manhattan townhouse under mysterious circumstances. She was discovered in her bedroom, dressed in a nightgown, sitting upright in bed with reading material nearby. The official cause of death was listed as an overdose of alcohol and barbiturates, but the peculiar details surrounding her death fueled speculation and suspicion. Several aspects of Kilgallen's death raised questions. First, her autopsy revealed a combination of drugs in her system that she was not known to abuse. Additionally, the placement of her body and the presence of makeup suggested she had been moved or staged post-mortem. Most troubling was the fact that the notes and manuscript she had been working on, related to her JFK investigation, were missing and never recovered. These anomalies led many to believe that Kilgallen's death was not accidental, but rather the result of foul play. It was speculated that she was silenced because of the sensitive information she had uncovered about the Kennedy assassination. Moe Howard, drowning in debt. He was the leader of the beloved comedy trio The Three Stooges and was known for his humor and iconic bowl haircut. On screen, he entertained millions with his antics. He became a household name alongside Larry and Curly. Moses Harry Horwitz, better known as Moe Howard, was born on June 19, 1897, in the Brooklyn neighborhood of Bensonhurst, New York. He was the fourth of 5 sons born to Jenny Gorovitz and Solomon Horwitz, a family of Lithuanian Jewish descent. While his parents and brothers Benjamin, Jack, and Irving did not venture into show business, Moe, along with his older brother Shemp Howard, Samuel, and younger brother Curly Howard, Jerome, became iconic members of the Three Stooges. As a child, Moe was called Moe, but later preferred the name Harry. He had a great love for reading, particularly enjoying Horatio Alger books. His older brother Jack remembered, "I had many Horatio Alger books, and it was Moe's greatest pleasure to read them. They started his imaginative mind working and gave him ideas by the dozen. I think they were instrumental in putting thoughts into his head to become a person of good character and success." This early passion for reading and learning helped Moe immensely in his acting career, enabling him to quickly and easily memorize his lines. But even after he became famous and successful, something dark lurked in the shadows of his life. Beneath the comedic facade, Moe was rumored to have led a life fraught with financial struggles and hidden dealings that contrasted sharply with his public persona. To cope with these financial pressures, Moe was rumored to have turned to gambling, a habit that quickly spiraled out of control. Heavy gambling left Moe with big debts. It forced him to seek out questionable associates to manage his money troubles. Comedy killed them. No, really. The same brilliant minds that left audiences in stitches were slowly unraveling behind the scenes. From the manic energy of Robin Williams to the raw power of Sam Kinison, discover how these icons lived on the razor's edge between hilarity and tragedy. Warning, these stories will leave you gasping, not from laughter, but from shock. The rise and fall of John Belushi. He was born on January 24, 1949, in Chicago to Albanian immigrant parents. John Belushi discovered his comedic talent early, performing in high school productions. In 1971, Belushi joined the Second City comedy troupe in Chicago, where he honed his skills for 2 years. His work there caught the attention of National Lampoon magazine, leading to his involvement in the National Lampoon Radio Hour in 1973, alongside future SNL castmates Gilda Radner and Bill Murray. In 1975, Belushi became part of the original Saturday Night Live SNL cast. His characters like Samurai Futaba and the Blues Brothers quickly made him a standout. Belushi's impersonations, including Joe Cocker, Marlon Brando, and Elizabeth Taylor, became audience favorites. His partnership with Dan Aykroyd produced memorable sketches and later led to their film collaboration. Belushi's film career took off with 1978's National Lampoon's Animal House, grossing over $141 million. The film's success catapulted Belushi to movie stardom. He followed with 1,941 Inches, 1979, directed by Steven Spielberg, which, despite its mixed reception, showcased Belushi's growing star power. In 1980, The Blues Brothers hit theaters, expanding on the popular SNL sketch and becoming a cult classic. Despite his success, Belushi struggled with substance abuse. His cocaine use escalated, affecting his work and relationships. Colleagues noted his dedication, but also his increasingly reckless lifestyle. His final movie, Neighbors, 1981, reflected his declining health and erratic behavior. Friends and family attempted interventions, but Belushi's addiction continued to worsen. On March 5, 1982, Belushi was found dead from a speedball overdose at the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles. He was 33. The entertainment industry was shocked by his sudden death. Kathy Smith, a singer and drug dealer, later admitted to injecting Belushi with the fatal dose. She was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 15 months in prison. The enigma of Chris Farley. He was born February 15, 1964, in Madison, Wisconsin. Chris Farley grew up in a middle-class family and attended Marquette University, where he played rugby and discovered his love for comedy. After college, he performed with the Arc Improv Theater Group and worked at his father's oil company before joining Chicago's Second City Theater in 1988. Farley's talent caught the eye of SNL producer Lorne Michaels, who hired him as a cast member in 1990. His energetic physical comedy made him an instant hit. Characters like Matt Foley, the motivational speaker, became iconic. His willingness to throw himself into physical gags, often literally, endeared him to audiences. He formed a popular duo with David Spade, leading to their film collaborations. In 1995, Farley left SNL for a film career. His first starring role in Tommy Boy, 1995, grossed over $32 million and established him as a leading man in comedy. He followed with Black Sheep, 1996, and Beverly Hills Ninja, 1997, which further showcased his physical comedy skills. At the time of his death, Farley had been cast as the voice of Shrek in the animated film, having recorded about 85% of the character's dialogue before the role was recast. Despite professional success, Farley battled severe addiction and weight issues. He attended rehab 17 times, but struggled to maintain sobriety. Friends and colleagues, including Chris Rock and Lorne Michaels, expressed concern about his health and lifestyle. Farley's idol was John Belushi, and many noted alarming parallels between their lives and struggles. On December 18, 1997, Farley's brother John found him dead in his Chicago apartment. The cause was a speedball overdose, a combination of cocaine and morphine. He was 33, the same age as Belushi at his death, the complex life of Phil Hartman. He was born September 24, 1948 in Brantford, Ontario. His family moved to the United States when he was 10. Before comedy, Phil Hartman worked as a graphic designer, creating album covers for bands like Poco, America, and Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. This early career gave him a keen eye for visual presentation that would later influence his comedy. In 1975, Hartman joined the Los Angeles comedy group The Groundlings, where he met future SNL co-star Jon Lovitz. Hartman's talent for impressions and character work quickly made him a standout. He co-wrote the screenplay for the cult film Pee-wee's Big Adventure, 1985, with Paul Reubens, kickstarting his Hollywood career. After leaving SNL in 1994, Hartman starred as Bill McNeil on NBC's News Radio. He also voiced Troy McClure and Lionel Hutz on The Simpsons, along with numerous other voice acting roles in animated series and commercials. His ability to inhabit different characters made him one of the most versatile performers of his generation. Despite professional success, Hartman's personal life was turbulent. His third marriage to Bryn Omdahl was marked by conflict and her substance abuse. Friends noted Hartman often served as a stabilizing influence in their relationship. On May 28, 1998, Bryn, under the influence of cocaine and alcohol, shot Hartman while he slept in their Encino, California home. She then took her own life hours later. Their 2 children were in the house but unharmed. Hartman was 49. The mysterious death of Andy Kaufman. He was born January 17, 1949 in New York City. From a young age, Andy Kaufman was drawn to performing, staging shows for his family and friends. He began his career performing Elvis impersonations at comedy clubs in the early 1970s, quickly gaining attention for his unconventional style. Kaufman's unique brand of comedy caught the eye of Saturday Night Live producers, leading to multiple appearances on the show. His performances often left audiences unsure whether to laugh or feel uncomfortable, a deliberate tactic Kaufman employed. He famously read The Great Gatsby aloud until the audience left and performed as his obnoxious lounge singer alter ego, Tony Clifton. In 1978, Kaufman gained wider fame as Latka Gravas on the sitcom Taxi. Despite the show's success, Kaufman often expressed frustration with the constraints of sitcom acting. He continued to pursue his brand of performance art, including a series of concerts where he performed as Elvis and invited the audience to touch him. Kaufman was known for blurring the lines between reality and performance. His most famous stunt was a long-running feud with professional wrestler Jerry Lawler. Their confrontation on Late Night with David Letterman in 1982 was believed by many to be real, though it was later revealed to be staged. Kaufman also wrestled women as part of his act, offering a $1,000 prize to any woman who could pin him. In 1983, Kaufman was diagnosed with a rare form of lung cancer. True to his nature, many people, including some close to him, believed this to be another elaborate hoax. He sought alternative treatments, including a highly publicized trip to the Philippines for psychic surgery. Kaufman continued performing despite his declining health, refusing to publicly acknowledge his illness. On May 16, 1984, Kaufman died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 35. Due to his history of elaborate hoaxes, many fans believed his death was faked, expecting him to return years later. The speculation continued for decades, fueled by occasional statements from Kaufman's brother and associates. Years later, his partner Lynn Margulies and friend Bob Zmuda confirmed Kaufman had indeed passed away, hoping to put the rumors to rest. The turbulent story of Freddy Prins. He was born Frederick Carl Prietzel on June 22, 1954, in New York City, to a Puerto Rican mother and German father. Growing up in Washington Heights, Freddie Prinz discovered his talent for comedy early, often using humor to deal with the challenges of his multicultural background. He attended the Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts, where he began to hone his comedic skills. Prinz began performing stand-up at the Improv in New York as a teenager, quickly gaining attention for his sharp wit and charismatic stage presence. In 1973, at the age of 19, he made his network debut on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. His performance was so well received that Carson invited him to the couch, a rare honor for a first-time guest. This appearance catapulted Prinz to national attention. In 1974, at the age of 20, Prinz landed the lead role in Chico and the Man opposite Jack Albertson. The show was an immediate hit, making Prinz one of the first Latino actors to star in a successful primetime television series. Despite his rapid rise to fame, Prinz struggled with the pressures of stardom. He battled depression and developed a severe drug addiction, particularly to cocaine. His behavior became increasingly erratic, affecting his work and personal relationships. Prince's marriage to Katherine Heurn in 1975 was tumultuous, and they separated in 1976. On January 28, 1977, following a phone call with his estranged wife, Prince shot himself in his Los Angeles apartment. He was rushed to the UCLA Medical Center, but died the next day. Prince was only 22 years old. Initially ruled a suicide, a civil case later changed the official cause of death to accidental due to the influence of drugs. Prince's death shocked the entertainment industry and his fans. He left behind a son, Freddie Prinze Jr., who was less than a year old at the time and later followed in his father's footsteps as an actor. The Haunted Life of Robin Williams. He was born July 21, 1951 in Chicago, Illinois. The only child of an auto executive and a former model, Robin Williams grew up in a wealthy suburb of Detroit. He was a quiet child who came out of his shell when he began participating in high school drama. Williams attended Claremont Men's College to study political science, but left to pursue acting, studying at College of Marin and later winning a scholarship to the prestigious Juilliard School in New York. Williams's career in stand-up comedy began in the mid-1970s in San Francisco's comedy club circuit. His rapid-fire improvisational style quickly set him apart. In 1978, he landed the role of the alien Mork in a guest appearance on Happy Days, which led to the spin-off series Mork and Mindy, 1978 to 1982. The show's success catapulted Williams to stardom and showcased his unique comedic talents. His film career included diverse roles that demonstrated his range as an actor. Notable films included Good Morning Vietnam, 1987, Dead Poets Society, 1989, Awakenings, 1990, The Fisher King, 1991, Aladdin, 1992, Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, and Good Will Hunting, 1997, for which he won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Throughout his career, Williams performed on several USO tours, entertaining troops overseas, a cause close to his heart. Despite his professional success, Williams battled addiction and depression for much of his life. He struggled with cocaine and alcohol abuse in the early 1980s, but achieved sobriety for 2 decades before relapsing in 2003. He was open about his struggles, often incorporating them into his stand-up routines and using his experiences to connect with audiences on a deeper level. In 2014, Williams was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. However, an autopsy would later reveal that he had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, a progressive brain disorder that can cause hallucinations and mood changes. On August 11, 2014, Williams was found dead in his home in Tiburon, California. The cause was suicide by hanging. He was 63 years old. The eccentric career of Richard Pryor. He was born December 1, 1940 in Peoria, Illinois. Raised in his grandmother's brothel, Pryor's difficult childhood would later inform his raw, honest comedy style. After a stint in the Army, he began performing in clubs in his hometown before moving to New York City in 1963. His early performances at the Apollo Theater and various comedy clubs in New York helped refine his craft. In the late 1960s, Richard Pryor moved to California and began to develop his unique voice as a comedian. His early career included appearances on shows like The Ed Sullivan Show and The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. However, feeling constrained by the clean-cut image required for mainstream television, Pryor decided to change his approach, developing a more controversial and personal style. By the 1970s, Pryor had become a major star with groundbreaking comedy albums. That Nigger's Crazy, 1974, won the Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album, as did Bicentennial Nigger, 1976. These albums showcased Pryor's willingness to tackle taboo subjects, particularly race relations in America, with unflinching honesty and humor. Pryor's film career included hits like Silver Streak, 1976, Which Way Is Up, 1977, and Stir Crazy, 1980, the latter directed by Sidney Poitier and co-starring Gene Wilder, with whom Pryor formed a popular comedic duo. In 1979, Pryor visited Kenya and publicly denounced his use of the N-word, marking a significant shift in his material. On June 9, 1980, while freebasing cocaine, Pryor set himself on fire, suffering severe burns over 50% of his body. This near-death experience became a turning point. After a lengthy recovery, Pryor incorporated the incident into his stand-up routine, transforming a traumatic event into powerful, introspective comedy. His 1982 comeback special, Live on the Sunset Strip, is considered one of his greatest performances. In 1986, Pryor was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Despite his declining health, he continued to perform and appear in films. His autobiographical film, JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling, was released in 1986, offering a fictionalized account of his life and struggles. In 1998, Pryor became the first recipient of the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. Richard Pryor died of a heart attack on December 10, 2005, at the age of 65. Tragic fall of Sam Kennison. He was born December 8, 1953, in Yakima, Washington. Raised in a religious family, Sam Kennison followed in his father's footsteps and became a Pentecostal preacher in his teens. However, after his first marriage ended in divorce, Kennison left the ministry and turned to comedy, moving to Houston to pursue a career on the stand-up circuit. Kennison's transition to comedy in the early 1980s was marked by his unique style, a combination of his preacher's delivery and shocking confrontational material. His breakthrough came in 1985 with an appearance on HBO's Rodney Dangerfield's 9th annual Young Comedians special. This led to his first appearance on Late Night with David Letterman, where his explosive style immediately set him apart. His debut comedy album, Louder Than Hell, was released in 1986 and showcased his trademark scream and controversial material. Kennison quickly gained notoriety for his no-holds-barred approach to taboo subjects like religion, relationships, and drug use. He appeared in the film Back to School, 1986, alongside Rodney Dangerfield, introducing him to an even wider audience. Kennison became a regular on The Howard Stern Show and made music video cameos, collaborating with bands like Motley Crue and Anthrax. His 1988 Grammy-nominated comedy album, Have You Seen Me Lately?, further cemented his status as a comedy icon. Kennison's rise to fame was meteoric, but it came with a price. Despite his success, Kennison struggled with drug and alcohol addiction throughout his career. His wild lifestyle was legendary in Hollywood circles, often interfering with his work. Friends and fellow comedians frequently expressed concern about his health and behavior. Kennison made attempts to get sober but consistently relapsed. On April 10, 1992, Kennison was driving to a sold-out show in Laughlin, Nevada, with his new wife, Malika Suiri, whom he had married just 6 days earlier. Their car was hit head-on by a pickup truck driven by 17-year-old Troy Pearson, who had been drinking. Kennison, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, suffered severe head injuries. He died at the scene, reportedly speaking to someone unseen and saying, "I don't want to die," before he passed. He was 38 years old. The untimely death of Gilda Radner. She was born June 28, 1946, in Detroit, Michigan. The youngest child of a well-to-do family, Gilda Radner developed her comedic talents early, often using humor to cope with her struggles with eating disorders. She briefly attended the University of Michigan before dropping out to follow her boyfriend to Canada, where her comedy career began to take shape. Radner's big break came in 1975 when she became one of the original cast members of Saturday Night Live, SNL. She quickly became a fan favorite, creating beloved characters like Roseanne Rosanna-Dana, Emily Latella, and Baba Wawa, a parody of Barbara Walters. Her ability to blend physical comedy with sharp wit made her one of the show's standout performers. She won an Emmy Award for her work on SNL in 1978. In 1979, Radner met actor Gene Wilder while filming the comedy Hanky Panky. Though both were married to other people at the time, they fell in love and eventually married in 1984. This period saw Radner transition away from television, focusing on her one-woman Broadway show, Gilda Radner, Live from New York, and film projects, often alongside Wilder. In 1986, after experiencing persistent fatigue and pain, Radner was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. She underwent aggressive treatment, including surgery and chemotherapy. During this time, she wrote her autobiography, It's Always Something, documenting her battle with the disease with her characteristic humor and honesty. Radner briefly went into remission and attempted to revive her career, even planning a guest appearance on It's Gary Shandling Show in 1988. However, her cancer returned, and she was unable to film the episode. Throughout her illness, Radner advocated for increased awareness of ovarian cancer and the importance of early detection. On May 20th, 1989, Radner passed away from ovarian cancer. She was 42 years old. Her death marked the end of a remarkable career that brought joy and laughter to countless fans. Despite her illness, Radner's courage and humor remained steadfast, inspiring many. Her legacy continues to influence comedians and cancer survivors alike, reminding the world of her indomitable spirit and the joy she spread throughout her life. What happens when the cameras stop rolling and the applause fades away? At 90, Sophia Lauren guards a secret life that's far from the fairy tale we imagined. Here's a cinematic icon's fall from grace, a cautionary tale of fame's fleeting nature and the cruel hand of time. Early stardom. Sophia Lauren entered the world on September 20, 1934, in Rome. Sofia Villani Ciccolone's early years were marked by hardship. World War II ravaged Italy and food scarcity was a daily reality. The future star often went to bed hungry, a memory that would stay with her throughout her life. At 15, Sophia's fortunes began to change. She entered a beauty pageant in Naples, and while she didn't win, she caught the eye of Carlo Ponti, a film producer 22 years her senior. Ponti saw potential in the young beauty and became instrumental in launching her career. 1950 marked Sophia's film debut with a small role in Quo Vadis. Over the next few years, she appeared in several Italian films, honing her craft. Her breakthrough came in 1953 with Aida, where she played the title role. Critics began to take notice of the rising star. 1954 proved to be a pivotal year. Sophia starred in The Gold of Naples, directed by Vittorio De Sica. This film not only put her on the map, but also marked the beginning of a long and fruitful collaboration with De Sica. It was during this period that Sophia Ciccolone became Sophia Loren, a name that would soon be known worldwide. The roles kept coming. Too Bad She's Bad, 1954, The Sign of Venus, 1955, and Lucky to Be a Woman, 1956, all showcased her talent and growing star power. By the end of the 1950s, she had become Italy's biggest star, with Hollywood knocking at her door. In 1957, Lauren made her Hollywood debut in Boy on a Dolphin. The film introduced her to American audiences and marked the beginning of her international career. However, stardom came at a price. Long hours on set, constant public scrutiny, and the pressure to maintain her image took their toll. Despite the challenges, Lauren thrived. She once remarked, "Mistakes are part of the dues one pays for a full life." This philosophy seemed to guide her through the ups and downs of her burgeoning career. As the 1950s drew to a close, she stood on the brink of global superstardom, ready to take on the challenges and triumphs that lay ahead. Hollywood breakthrough. The 1960s catapulted Lauren to international stardom. She kicked off the decade with It Started in Naples, 1960, starring opposite Hollywood legend Clark Gable. The film was a hit, but it was just the beginning of a remarkable era for the Italian actress. 1961 brought a career-defining role in Vittorio De Sica's Two Women. Lauren portrayed Cicera, a mother protecting her daughter in war-torn Italy. The gritty, dramatic role was a departure from her glamorous image, and it paid off in spades. Her powerful performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1962, making her the first actor to win an Oscar for a non-English-speaking role. This historic win opened doors, but also presented new challenges. Lauren's move to America wasn't smooth sailing. She struggled with the language barrier and the fast-paced Hollywood lifestyle. In a moment of reflection, she once said, "Getting ahead in a difficult profession requires avid faith in yourself. That is why some people with mediocre talent but with great inner drive go much further than people with vastly superior talent." Despite these obstacles, Lauren's star continued to rise. She appeared in epic productions like El Cid, 1961, and The Fall of the Roman Empire, 1964. Her growing clout in the industry was evident when she signed a 5-picture contract with Paramount in 1964 for a staggering $10 million, the largest contract given to an actress at that time. The mid-60s saw Lauren in a string of successful films including Operation Crossbow and Lady L, both 1965. However, not every opportunity panned out. She famously turned down the role of Mama Corleone in The Godfather, a decision she would later express regret over. In 1967, she worked with the legendary Charlie Chaplin in A Countess from Hong Kong, his final film. Though Chaplin's demanding directing style made the experience challenging, Lauren valued it as a learning experience. The decade closed with her firmly established as an international icon. Her reunion with Marcello Mastroianni and De Sica for Sunflower, 1970, reinforced her status as a global star. With 24 films under her belt in the 1960s alone, Lauren had not just broken through in Hollywood, she had conquered it. Tumultuous love life. Her romantic life was as dramatic as any of her on-screen roles, dominated by her relationship with Carlo Ponti. Their story began in 1950 when Lauren was just 15 and Ponti was 37. This significant age gap raised eyebrows, but it was only the beginning of their complicated journey. The main obstacle to their union was Ponti's existing marriage. Divorce was illegal in Italy at the time, creating a seemingly insurmountable barrier. In 1957, the couple attempted to circumvent Italian law by marrying by proxy in Mexico. However, this solution backfired when Italy refused to recognize the marriage, leading to charges of bigamy against both Lauren and Ponti. To escape legal troubles, the couple moved to France. In 1965, Ponti finally obtained a divorce from his first wife through the French courts. They married again in 1966, this time legally and permanently. Despite these hurdles, their love endured. Lauren once famously quipped, "A woman's dress should be like a barbed wire fence, serving its purpose without obstructing the view." Her relationship with Ponti seemed to embody this philosophy, strong and protective, yet allowing for individual growth. The 1960s brought personal challenges for Lauren. She suffered 2 miscarriages, experiences that deeply affected her. Her desire for motherhood was strong, and the setbacks were emotionally taxing. Finally, in 1968, she gave birth to her first son, Carlo Ponti Jr. Her second son, Eduardo, followed in 1973. Motherhood transformed Lauren's priorities. She began to scale back her film work, focusing more on her family. "Nothing makes a woman more beautiful than the belief that she is beautiful," she once said, and motherhood seemed to give her a new kind of confidence and fulfillment. Balancing her career with family life proved challenging. Lauren became more selective about her roles, leading some to speculate that her star was fading. However, she remained unperturbed, her focus firmly on her family. Throughout the 1970s, her personal happiness seemed to grow even as her film appearances became less frequent. Her relationship with Ponti remained strong, with the couple often collaborating professionally. By the end of the 1970s, Lauren had found a new equilibrium. Her career, while less hectic, was still strong, and her family life was flourishing. Career decline. The 1980s marked a shift in Sophia Loren's career trajectory. As she entered her 5th decade, the actress found herself grappling with an industry that often sidelined older women. The roles that had once been plentiful began to dwindle, and those that came her way often failed to match the caliber of her earlier work. In 1980, Lauren starred in Firepower, an action thriller that received lukewarm reviews. Critics praised her enduring beauty but found the film lacking. This pattern would repeat throughout the decade, with her performances often outshining the material she was given. Television became a new frontier for Lauren. In 1981, she appeared in her first made-for-TV movie, Sophia Lauren, Her Own Story, a biopic where she played both herself and her mother. While the project allowed her to showcase her range, it also signaled a shift away from big-screen stardom. Despite the challenges, Lauren continued to work. She appeared in Aurora, 1984, and Courage, 1986, though neither film matched her earlier successes. In 1988, she starred alongside Walter Matthau in Ready to Wear, a Robert Altman film that received mixed reviews. The decade also saw her venturing into new territories. She launched her own perfume line in 1981 and an eyewear collection in 1989. These business ventures helped maintain her public profile even as film roles became scarcer. Loss of Carlo Ponti. The new millennium brought a devastating blow to her personal life. On January 10, 2007, Carlo Ponti, her husband of 5 decades, passed away at the age of 94. The loss of her life partner marked the end of an era for Lauren, who had been with Ponti since her teenage years. Ponti died of pulmonary complications at a hospital in Geneva, Switzerland, where the couple had been living for years. Their move to Switzerland in the 1980s was partly motivated by tax issues in Italy, but it had become their home. In the days following Ponti's death, Lauren maintained a dignified silence, grieving privately with her family. The couple's enduring relationship had been a constant in Lauren's life amidst the ups and downs of her career. Ponty had been not just her husband, but also her mentor and frequent collaborator. He had produced many of her films and had been instrumental in shaping her career from the very beginning. In a rare interview following Ponty's death, Lauren reflected on their relationship. "I was very young when I met Carlo. I knew immediately he was the right man for me. He taught me everything. He was my master, my lover, my father, my friend." The loss left a void in her life that was palpable. She withdrew from public life for a period, canceling scheduled appearances and declining interviews. Her sons, Carlo Jr. and Eduardo, remained close to their mother during this difficult time. As she grappled with her grief, Lauren found solace in her family and her enduring faith. A devout Catholic, she often spoke about the importance of her beliefs in helping her navigate life's challenges. In 2009, 2 years after Ponty's passing, Lauren made a poignant return to the screen in the television film My House is Full of Mirrors, based on her sister's autobiography. The role, which saw her playing her own mother, was deeply personal and seemed to mark a new chapter in her life and career. Health struggles. The 2010s brought new challenges for Sophia Lauren as she entered her 8th decade. While she had always been known for her vitality and seemingly ageless beauty, time began to take its toll. Health issues, previously kept private, started to impact her public life more visibly. In 2011, at the age of 76, Lauren underwent hip surgery. The procedure, while successful, required a lengthy recovery period. It forced her to cancel several public appearances, including a scheduled performance at her son Carlo Jr.'s concert in Canada. The following years saw Lauren facing undisclosed illnesses that she chose to keep private. However, her reduced public appearances and occasional cancellations of scheduled events hinted at ongoing health struggles. Despite this, she maintained a brave face, once stating in an interview, "There is a fountain of youth. It is your mind, your talents, the creativity you bring to your life and the lives of people you love." In 2015, at 80, Lauren made headlines when she was hospitalized after a fall in her Geneva home. The incident resulted in a fractured bone, necessitating another surgery. Her recovery was slow but steady, and she eventually returned to the public eye, though with noticeably less frequency. The actress's legendary beauty, while still evident, began to show signs of age. Lauren, who had once famously said, "Everything you see I owe to spaghetti," now found herself battling the physical changes that come with advancing years. Yet, she approached this new challenge with characteristic grace and humor. Despite her health setbacks, she remained determined to continue working when possible. In 2016, at 81, she appeared in a short film for Dolce & Gabbana, showcasing her enduring allure. However, the physical demands of acting became increasingly challenging. Family estrangement. As she entered her late 80s, rumors of family discord began to surface, casting a shadow over the actress's once idyllic family life. The relationship between Lauren and her 2 sons, Carlo Jr. and Eduardo, reportedly became strained, though the reasons remained largely private. In 2018, Italian media reported that Lauren had not attended her grandson Vittorio's wedding. Vittorio, the son of Eduardo Ponty, married in a lavish ceremony in Italy. Her absence was notable, sparking speculation about family tensions. When questioned, her representatives cited scheduling conflicts, but the explanation did little to quell rumors. In 2020, Lauren made a return to acting in the Netflix film The Life Ahead, directed by her son Eduardo. While this collaboration seemed to indicate a thawing of relations, behind-the-scenes reports suggested that the working relationship was professional but tense. One crew member noted, "There was love there, but also a palpable distance." Adding to the family complications were reports of disagreements over Lauren's estate. With an estimated net worth of $75 million, questions about inheritance reportedly caused friction. Known for her privacy, she refused to comment on these matters publicly. Despite the apparent estrangement, Lauren continued to speak fondly of her family in interviews, though her comments became noticeably more guarded. In a 2021 interview, she said, "Family is everything to me, but as in all families, there are complications and misunderstandings. We work through them." The situation seemed to take an emotional toll on Lauren. Friends reported that she spent more time alone, often reminiscing about happier times. One longtime friend said, "Sophia is strong, but this separation from her family hurts her deeply. She never imagined her twilight years would be like this." Financial woes. Despite a career spanning over 6 decades and a reputation as one of cinema's greatest icons, Sophia Loren's financial situation in recent years has reportedly become precarious. The stark contrast between her glamorous past and current circumstances has shocked many fans and industry insiders alike. In 2022, Italian financial magazine Il Sole 24 Ore reported that Loren's fortune had dwindled significantly. While exact figures are hard to confirm due to her intensely private nature, estimates suggest her net worth has dropped from a peak of around $75 million to less than $10 million. This decline has been attributed to a combination of factors, including poor investments, legal battles, and the increasing costs of maintaining her lifestyle. One significant blow came from a protracted legal dispute with Italian tax authorities. In 2013, Loren won a nearly 40-year battle over alleged tax evasion from 1974. While this victory cleared her name, the legal fees reportedly took a substantial toll on her finances. Adding to her financial strain, some of Loren's real estate investments have underperformed. A source close to the actress revealed, Sophia invested heavily in property during the 1980s and 1990s, but several of these investments have lost value over time. The maintenance costs alone have been a drain on her resources. Loren's reduced income from acting has also contributed to her financial challenges. As roles became scarcer with age, her once substantial earning power diminished. Her last major film, The Life Ahead, 2020, while critically acclaimed, did not command the hefty paycheck of her prime years. Reports suggest that she has been forced to downsize, selling off some of her properties and valuable possessions. A Christie's auction in 2024 featured several pieces of jewelry and art from her personal collection, further fueling speculation about her financial state. Despite these challenges, Loren has maintained her dignity and grace. Friends say she's adapted to a simpler lifestyle, focusing on what truly matters to her: isolation and loneliness. In recent years, Sophia Loren's life has taken a turn towards seclusion, a stark contrast to the vibrant social life she once led. Now approaching her 90s, the iconic actress spends most of her time in her Geneva apartment, rarely venturing out into the public eye. Reports from 2022 suggest that her circle of friends has significantly diminished. Many of her contemporaries have passed away, leaving her feeling increasingly isolated. A close friend, speaking anonymously, revealed, Sophia misses the camaraderie of her Hollywood days. She often talks about Cary Grant and Marcello Mastroianni, feeling like a relic of a bygone era. Loren's withdrawal from public life became more pronounced following a fall in her home in 2021. The incident left her wary of public appearances, fearing another accident. Her last major red carpet appearance was in 2020, at a special screening of The Life Ahead in Rome. Despite her isolation, Loren has attempted to stay connected with the world. In 2021, she joined social media, sharing occasional glimpses of her life with fans. However, her posts are infrequent and often managed by her staff, providing little real interaction. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated Loren's isolation. Already cautious due to her age, the global health crisis forced her into stricter seclusion. A neighbor in Geneva noted, "We used to see her taking short walks in the garden, but even that stopped during the lockdowns. It's been hard for her." Her loneliness is compounded by her strained family relationships. While she occasionally speaks with her sons via video calls, in-person visits have become rare. In a poignant moment during a 2023 interview, Loren admitted, "The silence in my home is sometimes deafening. I miss the chaos of a full house." Despite these challenges, she tries to maintain her spirits. She spends time reading, watching classic films, and occasionally painting, a hobby she picked up in her later years. Her housekeeper of 30 years, Maria, remains a constant presence, providing companionship and care. In her solitude, Loren often reflects on her extraordinary life. As she told an Italian magazine in early 2024, "I've lived 1,000 lives in one lifetime. Now, in the quiet, I revisit those memories. They keep me company when the world feels far away." A bittersweet life. As Sophia Loren turns 90 in 2024, she finds herself in a contemplative mood, looking back on a life filled with extraordinary highs and profound lows. Despite her reduced public presence, she agreed to a rare interview with an Italian journalist to mark this milestone. 90 years, Loren mused, her voice carrying the weight of her experiences. It seems impossible, and yet here I am. I've outlived so many of my contemporaries. It's a blessing and a burden." Reflecting on her career, she expressed both pride and a hint of regret. "I achieved more than that little girl from Pozzuoli ever dreamed possible," she said, "but there were roles I wish I had taken, challenges I wish I had embraced." She specifically mentioned turning down the role of Mama Corleone in The Godfather, a decision she still questions. Lauren's thoughts often turned to her late husband, Carlo Ponti. "Carlo was my anchor," she revealed. "Without him, I sometimes feel adrift." Their 50-year marriage, despite its tumultuous start, remains a source of comfort in her memories. The actress also addressed her current family situation with candor. "Family is complicated," she sighed. "Love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. My boys, we've had our difficulties, but they are still my heart." Financially, Lauren acknowledged the changes in her circumstances. "I've known luxury and I've known simplicity. At 90, I find there's beauty in both." She dismissed concerns about her financial state, stating, "I have what I need." Looking to the future, she remained characteristically resilient. "I may not be as active as I once was, but I'm still here, still curious about the world." She mentioned a possible memoir, saying, "There are still stories I'd like to tell, in my own words." As the interview concluded, Lauren offered a piece of wisdom gained from her 9 decades. "Life is long if you know how to use it. I've had moments of great joy and deep sorrow, but I regret nothing. Every experience has made me who I am." There is no telling what people are up to behind closed doors when no one is watching. But when it comes to the Hollywood stars on this list, there is no doubt that the golden age of Hollywood had its fair share of nastiness and pure lust. From being intimate with both men and women, to openly admitting seeking help from the nympho addiction, some of these stars knew they had a problem, but for others, they hid behind the veil of marriage. Regardless, they all had the same thing in common. They simply could not resist a good time in the sheets. Pamela Anderson. This amazing star has never been one to hold back when it comes to talking about her love life. Back in her younger days, she admitted in an interview that her libido was, in her words, uncontrollable. And honestly, it's not hard to see why people took notice. She wasn't just famous for her role on Baywatch, but also for her high-profile relationships with rock stars like Tommy Lee and Kid Rock. Even as she got older, Pamela didn't shy away from the subject. She embraced her image as a sensual symbol and kept things playful, sharing that she still enjoyed adding a little spice to her relationships. Her openness about physical intimacy and love has kept her in the spotlight as one of the most talked-about stars when it comes to libido. But here's the thing. Pamela's carefree and unapologetic attitude about her sexuality isn't just a phase or an act. It's been a core part of who she is from the start. She's never let society's expectations box her in, and that's probably why fans have always been so fascinated by her. Love her or not, you've got to admit, Pamela Anderson has always danced to the beat of her own drum. Vivien Leigh. She was far more complex than the glamorous image she portrayed on screen as Scarlett O'Hara. Beneath the surface of her dazzling career lay a life filled with personal struggles, heartbreak, and battles that would have overwhelmed many. Her relationships were often a focal point for public gossip, particularly her well-known affairs with co-stars like Robert Taylor and Peter Finch, even during her marriage to Laurence Olivier. While the tabloids painted her as scandalous, the truth of her life was far more nuanced and deeply human. Vivien's real challenge wasn't the judgment of others, it was the battle within herself. She suffered from bipolar disorder, a condition that was poorly understood at the time. It led to extreme mood swings that impacted her relationships, career, and overall well-being. Her struggles became even more pronounced after a devastating miscarriage in 1945, an event that many believe intensified her emotional pain and left scars that never fully healed. Her health challenges didn't stop there. The book, Reframing Vivien Leigh, details how she suffered from illnesses throughout her life, which added another layer of difficulty to an already turbulent existence. These health issues, along with the rumors and speculation they stirred, created an image of a troubled star in the public eye. But behind the headlines was a woman fighting battles most would never understand. Despite it all, Vivien remained remarkably resilient. She continued to pour herself into her craft, delivering performances that captivated audiences and cemented her place in cinematic history. On stage and screen, she exuded a magnetic presence that few could match, even as she wrestled with her inner demons. Elizabeth Taylor. Her love life was always making headlines, and for good reason. She got married 8 times, to 7 different men, and didn't hold back when it came to following her heart. The press loved to slap labels on her, calling her everything from unpredictable to wild, especially when her romance with Richard Burton hit the scene. That relationship was Hollywood drama at its peak. Both Elizabeth and Richard were married to other people when their affair started, which only added fuel to the media frenzy. But their connection was undeniable, and their on-again, off-again romance became one of the most talked-about love stories of all time. They had fiery arguments, grand reunions, and moments so passionate they could have been straight out of one of their movies. The thing about Elizabeth, though, is she never apologized for living her life the way she wanted. She once said, "I don't regret anything I've ever done," and she meant it. She wasn't about to let public opinion dictate how she lived or who she loved. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature. She loved deeply, made bold choices, and owned every moment of it. That's what made her unforgettable, not just her beauty or talent, but the way she lived life on her terms. Rita Hayworth. Her love life was just as adventurous as her Hollywood career. Known for her beauty and elegance, she had a magnetic charm that made her one of the most sought-after stars of her time. But Rita's personal life was as dramatic as any of her films, filled with passion, heartbreak, and headline-making romances. She was married 5 times, each relationship capturing public attention in its own way. Her second husband, Orson Welles, was a creative genius, best known for Citizen Kane. Together, they were seen as a power couple, blending Hollywood glamour with artistic brilliance. But their marriage was far from perfect, and like many of her relationships, it didn't last. Then came Prince Ali Khan, the dashing son of the Aga Khan. Their affair caused an international stir. Rita was already a massive star, and Ali was one of the most eligible bachelors in the world. When they got married, it seemed like a real-life fairy tale, the movie star and the prince. But even that storybook romance had its troubles. Their relationship was marked by intense highs and lows, and they eventually divorced. Rita wasn't just someone who fell in love. She dove headfirst into it, living with passion and following her heart wherever it led her. But that kind of intensity came with its challenges. She once said, "Every man I knew fell in love with Gilda and woke up with me," referring to her famous role in the movie Gilda. It was a bittersweet reflection on how people often saw her as the glamorous character on screen rather than the real woman behind it. Beyond the rumors and gossip, Rita Hayworth was a deeply human figure. She loved fiercely and openly, and she carried herself with grace even when things didn't work out. While her personal life was far from smooth, it's also what made her so relatable. Warren Beatty. While his career took off after the Golden Age, his romantic life was just as much a part of his legend as his acting. He was known for dating some of the biggest stars of the time, with his list of lovers reportedly numbering in the hundreds. Beatty didn't just have a few flings. He was deeply involved with many women, including major names like Natalie Wood, Julie Christie, and even Madonna in the 80s. His charm and looks kept him in the headlines, but it was his personality that really fueled the gossip. Beatty had a reputation for being confident and captivating, always able to win over whoever he set his sights on. His romantic relationships often became public spectacles, and he was rarely far from the tabloids. For years, he seemed to live in the spotlight, balancing his acting career with a relentless pursuit of romance. Despite his womanizing reputation, Beatty eventually settled down with actress Annette Bening, a move that surprised many who had grown used to his bachelor lifestyle. But even then, the stories of his past relationships continued to follow him, ensuring that his place in Hollywood history was as much about his personal life as it was about his films. Marlon Brando. Known not just for his incredible acting, but also for his wild, unpredictable love life. With his smoldering looks and undeniable talent, Brando quickly became a heartthrob, but his personal life was as intense as his performances on screen. He had numerous relationships with both men and women, making headlines for his openness and rebellious nature. Brando wasn't shy about his romantic interests, and over the years he fathered 11 children with different partners. His love life was as complicated and unpredictable as his roles, with many ups and downs. From his passionate relationships to his unorthodox lifestyle, Brando lived life on his own terms, constantly challenging Hollywood norms. Despite his many romantic entanglements, Brando was known for being deeply private about his personal affairs, leaving many details about his relationships to speculation. Still, his love life became as much a part of his legendary status as his groundbreaking performances, proving that he was not only a force on screen but off it too. Clark Gable. Often called the King of Hollywood, he was just as well known for his off-screen romantic life as he was for his iconic film roles. With his charm, good looks, and rugged appeal, Gable captured the hearts of women both on and off the screen. He was married 5 times, with each marriage making headlines in its own right. But it was his extramarital affair with actress Loretta Young that truly made waves. Their relationship resulted in a secret love child, a scandal that Hollywood tried to keep under wraps. Despite their affair happening while they were both married to other people, Young kept the child's existence a secret for many years, with Gable only acknowledging his daughter much later in life. This secret love affair and its fallout added a layer of complexity to Gable's otherwise polished public image. Gable's love life was often filled with drama, but it only added to the mystique of his public persona. His relationships were just as intense as his famous roles, and the stories behind them became as much a part of his life as the films that made him a legend. Zsa Zsa Gabor. A lot of people will go to great lengths to hide who they really are, especially when the rest of the world around them will not accept it. But not Zsa Zsa Gabor. This woman was bold, fearless, and unapologetic about her free-spirited lifestyle. With a personal life that kept the tabloids buzzing and known for her 9 marriages, she certainly wasn't shy about her love life. Each of her marriages seemed to be more high-profile than the last, and her relationships were often just as public. But it wasn't just her marriages that had people talking. Her flirtatious personality and quick wit made her one of Hollywood's most charming and talked-about stars. Gabor loved the attention, and she knew how to work the spotlight. Her reputation as a woman who was always in search of love and excitement was solidified by the countless rumored affairs and passionate relationships she had over the years. Zsa Zsa made no apologies for the way she lived her life, and she leaned into her role as a woman who refused to follow society's rules. Much like many other actresses of her time, Gabor was labeled by the public as a nymphomaniac, a term that reflected society's discomfort with women who openly expressed their desires. But in many ways, she and others like her were challenging the strict and often unfair expectations placed on women during Hollywood's golden age. They weren't just breaking hearts, they were breaking down barriers, showing that women could have control over their love lives and reject the conventional norms that were expected of them. Robert Mitchum. If there were ever a male version of Gabor, this would be him, just like her. Robert wasn't too keen on listening to what other people thought about him, and he lived his life regardless. He was the ultimate tough guy on screen, known for his gritty roles in noir films and westerns. But off-screen, his life was just as intense. Mitchum didn't just play bad boys, he lived like one too. He had a rebellious streak that made him a bit of a Hollywood maverick, and his personal life was filled with rumors of numerous affairs. Even though Mitchum was married for decades to his wife, Dorothy, his extramarital relationships were widely talked about. His rugged charm and laid-back attitude made him irresistible, and Hollywood couldn't help but be fascinated by his romantic entanglements. Mitchum didn't care much for the spotlight, but his love life added to the mystique of his public persona, with whispers about his love affairs and escapades never far from the tabloids. In a time when many actors tried to keep their personal lives under wraps, Mitchum's rebellious nature meant he was never one to follow the rules, whether in his roles or his relationships. His ability to balance a high-profile career with a secretive love life only made him more intriguing to the public, further cementing his legacy as one of Hollywood's most complicated and charismatic stars. Marilyn Monroe. We all know Monroe, don't we? So many things have been associated with her name: beauty, style, talent. But today, we will talk about her more intimate nature. She was Hollywood's ultimate bombshell, right? But her life off-screen was far from perfect. The media loved to paint her as a nymphomaniac because of her string of high-profile relationships, like her marriages to Joe DiMaggio and Arthur Miller. And of course, there were the infamous rumors about her affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. All of that gossip made her love life a constant headline. But what the public didn't really see was how much deeper her struggles went. Marilyn wasn't just looking for love. She was emotionally vulnerable, craving acceptance, and battling inner demons that nobody really understood. Her tragic demise at just 36 in 1962 left more questions than answers about who she truly was. Marilyn might have been this glamorous, larger-than-life figure on screen, but in real life, she was one of Hollywood's most misunderstood stars. Her story is filled with mystery, and even today she remains an iconic figure, both admired and misjudged. Angelina Jolie. With a face that can turn heads and eyes that make you freeze in your boots, Angelina Jolie certainly has earned her place on this list. Her marriage to Billy Bob Thornton was the stuff of legend. Remember when they wore vials of each other's blood around their necks? It was a relationship that constantly made headlines, especially since they were so open about their love life, often discussing it in interviews. Jolie's relationships have always sparked a lot of attention, largely because of her undeniable chemistry with her partners. Former lovers have shared stories about her adventurous side, like her love of incorporating knives into her intimate moments, which only added fuel to the media fire. While these days, Jolie focuses more on humanitarian work and raising her kids, her earlier reputation as a passionate, wild lover still follows her. That part of her story has become just as much a part of her public image as her acting career. Lana Turner. Her love life was just as dramatic as the roles she played on screen. With 7 marriages and countless affairs, she built a reputation for being unable to resist romance. She had high-profile relationships with men like Tyrone Power and Howard Hughes, but it was her scandalous affair with gangster Johnny Stompanato that really grabbed the tabloids' attention. Their relationship took a dark turn when, in 1958, Lana's teenage daughter Cheryl Crane stabbed Stompanato to death, ending a story filled with passion and violence. The media had a field day painting Lana as a woman whose love life led to tragedy. She was often labeled a nymphomaniac, a tag that stuck with her for years. But despite everything, Lana lived life on her own terms. She may have faced heartbreak and public judgment, but she never let that stop her from seeking love and living in the spotlight, even if it meant living through the consequences of her passionate choices. Tula Bankhead. She was loud, unapologetically bold, and never afraid to go after what she wanted. In an era when women were expected to fit into neat little boxes, Tula smashed every stereotype with ease. One of the things that really made her stand out was her open bisexuality. This was shocking to a lot of people at the time, especially since it wasn't something anyone openly talked about back then. But Tula didn't hide it. She had passionate love affairs with both men and women, with famous names like actor Gary Cooper and singer Billie Holiday being among her lovers. She didn't just have relationships, she lived them out loud, and everyone knew about it. Her love life wasn't some private affair, it was part of her public persona. She was so open about it that people couldn't help but talk about her. One of her most famous quotes was, "My father warned me about men and booze, but he never said a word about women and cocaine." It's clear she had no intention of apologizing for her wild ways, and she lived exactly how she wanted to, without a care in the world about what others thought. The press, of course, loved to make her the subject of gossip, often labeling her a nymphomaniac because of her adventurous love life. But Tula didn't let those labels stick. To her, she was just being herself, living free, wild, and in the moment without caring what anyone thought. She was unapologetic, and that's part of what made her so fascinating to everyone around her. Charlie Sheen. Known for living life on the edge, his history of relationships with hundreds of women, including porn stars and escorts, Charlie became public long before the shocking revelation of his HIV diagnosis in 2015. Sheen's wild ways weren't exactly a secret. His personal life was often a topic of conversation, with stories about his outrageous parties, erratic behavior, and infamous scandals filling the tabloids for years. Even after learning of his HIV diagnosis, Sheen didn't slow down. He continued living the same hedonistic lifestyle, partying hard and engaging in reckless behavior despite the consequences. This led to massive public backlash, with many criticizing him for not taking his health and responsibilities seriously. But even with all the controversy, Sheen remained one of the most talked about figures in Hollywood. His behavior often overshadowed his acting career, but he was still able to stay relevant, proving just how much controversy seemed to follow him wherever he went. Despite all the ups and downs, Charlie Sheen's name was always in the spotlight. Whether it was for his role in 2.5 Men, his dramatic breakdowns, or his headline-grabbing personal life, Sheen was one of those celebrities who couldn't escape the constant buzz around him, good or bad. His story is a prime example of how scandal and fame often go hand in hand in the world of Hollywood. Michael Douglas. He was one of Hollywood's biggest stars and shocked fans in the 1990s when he admitted to seeking treatment for bedroom addiction. Known for his smooth charm and being a ladies' man, Douglas had always been in the public eye for his high-profile relationships and romantic escapades. His first marriage ended in part because of his infidelity, and the tabloids were filled with stories about his flings. It seemed like his personal life was just as dramatic as his Hollywood career. But over time, Douglas opened up about his struggles. In the 1990s, he revealed that his issues went beyond just the thrill of being with women. It was more complex than that. He admitted that his addiction was just a part of a bigger picture of personal challenges he was facing, and he made the brave decision to seek help. This was a side of Douglas fans had never really seen, and it showed a more vulnerable, honest side of the actor. Through all of this, Douglas found stability in his marriage to actress Catherine Zeta-Jones. She stood by him through thick and thin, including some of the toughest moments in his life. When he was diagnosed with throat cancer, it was Catherine's support that helped him fight through it. Their relationship proved to be a rock for him, and it gave him a foundation he hadn't had before. Despite the public struggles and battles, Michael Douglas didn't let those define him. His career continued to thrive, with him taking on major roles and continuing to cement his place as a Hollywood icon. It was clear that while his personal battles had been tough, they didn't overshadow his talent or his legacy in the entertainment world. He became an example of someone who could overcome their demons and still come out on top, proving that everyone has their challenges, but it doesn't have to define who you are or what you do.
I like the way you talk.
Linda Darnell is no doubt one of the Hollywood starlets who graced the silver screen and gave it all she had. However, she is also known for facing several challenges all through her life and career, but persevering through it all. For all of these reasons, she will be remembered forever. Let's take a closer look at her life and memories. Her early life. Linda Darnell was born in September 1923 in Dallas, Texas. She was one of 4 kids in her family. Her dad, Calvin Roy Darnell, was a postal clerk, and her mom, Margaret Pearl Brown, had big dreams for Linda. Pearl, who had Cherokee roots, saw Linda as her chance to achieve the stardom she never had. But life at home wasn't perfect. Linda's parents often fought, and her siblings didn't get much attention. Growing up in this environment, Linda found comfort in her mom's belief in her acting abilities. From a young age, Linda was pushed into the spotlight, taking part in many contests and performances because of Pearl's drive. Even though Linda wasn't sure of her own talent and didn't always want to be a star, she went along with her mom's plans. She probably thought that by making Pearl's dreams come true, she could find some stability and approval in her chaotic family life. Linda's childhood had its difficulties. She had some happy moments, but the constant tension at home and Pearl's demanding nature made Linda shy. At school, she preferred spending time alone, focusing on her Spanish and art studies at Sunset High School. But when she was on stage, she shone brightly. She joined the Dallas Little Theater and did well in plays like Murder in the Cathedral. Outside school, she worked as a hostess at the Texas Centennial Exposition, where her grace and charm hinted at the star she would become. In 1937, a talent scout from 20th Century Fox came to Dallas looking for new faces for the movies. With Pearl's encouragement, Linda met the scout and made a great impression. She was invited to Hollywood for a screen test. In February 1938, she traveled to California with other hopefuls, Mary Healy and Doris Bowden, filled with hope and determination despite some initial setbacks due to her age. Climbing the career ladder. Linda Darnell dreamed of being a stage actress, but fate had other plans. Hollywood scouts noticed her during the Gateway to Hollywood talent search. She was first signed by RKO Pictures, but things didn't work out, and she returned to Dallas for a while. Then, 20th Century Fox made her an offer. After some contractual disputes, she moved to Hollywood at just 15 years old, arriving on April 5, 1939, and settling into a small apartment. Linda's big break came with her debut in Hotel for Women, 1939. The newspapers called her Hollywood's newest star. She was originally set to play a role meant for Loretta Young. Studio head Darrell F. Zanuck thought Linda had the allure and exotic look that would attract audiences. Even though she was young, the studio adjusted her age on paper, and columnist Luella O. Parsons admired her naivety and loyalty to Zanuck. Despite these great opportunities, Linda quickly realized how tough Hollywood filmmaking was. She showed her versatility early on, working with stars like Henry Fonda and Claudette Colbert in Drums Along the Mohawk, 1939. However, she was later replaced because her role was seen as too small. Still, Linda didn't give up. She wanted to co-star with Tyrone Power and mentioned it in interviews, though she didn't get the role in Johnny Apollo, 1940. She found success in Daytime Wife, 1939, a romantic comedy where her performance was praised for her youthful charm and acting skills. Her career continued to rise with movies like Stardust, 1940, solidifying her status as a promising Hollywood talent. Critics called her Hollywood's loveliest and most exciting star, praising her youthful charisma and screen presence. Despite the early praise, Linda faced challenges in keeping her image and managing her studio contracts. Her revised contract with 20th Century Fox promised her $200 a week, setting the stage for a career filled with both triumphs and trials. Stardom beckons. In the early 1940s, Linda Darnell's career took off with her role in the big-budget epic Brigham Young, 1940. Filmed on location, it was one of 20th Century Fox's biggest projects. She starred alongside Tyrone Power again, and their chemistry led to more romantic scenes being added. Director Henry Hathaway remembered her as a sweeter girl who never lived. After Brigham Young, Linda's earnings soared, surpassing many top bank officials by mid-1940. That summer, she starred in The Mark of Zorro, 1940, with Power, a hit that cemented her status as a box office draw. Next, she worked with Henry Fonda in Chad Hanna, 1940, her first Technicolor film, which got moderate attention. But Blood and Sand, 1941, filmed in Mexico with Power, showed off her acting skills and earned her critical acclaim. Despite this success, Linda felt her career was changing. She said, "People got tired of seeing the sweet young things I was playing, and I landed at the bottom of the roller coaster." She felt her roles were less fulfilling and her career began to slow down. The studio had trouble finding good roles for her, and she missed out on parts in Song of the Islands, 1942, and Remember the Day, 1941, which went to other actresses. This period of disappointment made her feel rejected and disillusioned with the industry. Even with setbacks in her film career, Linda stayed active by working with the Red Cross and selling war bonds during World War II. She showed her commitment to more than just her acting career, clinching more screen success. In 1946, Linda Darnell landed the lead role in the highly anticipated film adaptation of the controversial bestseller Forever Amber. This period drama set in 17th century England was a big change for Darnell, who was known for her dark hair and sultry looks. In the film, she played a character named Amber, famous for her fiery red hair. This production was 20th Century Fox's most expensive project yet, drawing as much attention as Gone with the Wind. Darnell's casting was a strategic move by the studio to boost her profile and give her a substantial role after years of struggling to break through in Hollywood. She was surprised to get the part, as she had been preparing for another film, but she embraced the opportunity, calling herself the luckiest girl in Hollywood. Preparing for Forever. Amber was intense. Darnell went through rigorous dieting, voice coaching to master an English accent, and many costume fittings to fit the role perfectly. She believed this film would take her career to new heights, confidently telling the press that the next phase of her Hollywood journey would be much more rewarding than her early years. However, the filming process was challenging. Darnell had tensions with director Otto Preminger, which strained the production. The rigorous schedule and physical demands of the role led to her exhaustion and a serious illness, causing a temporary halt in filming. Despite these setbacks, Forever Amber was a box office success when it was released in 1947. However, critics were not as impressed as expected, which disappointed Darnell, who had hoped for greater acclaim. Darnell didn't let this setback stop her. She delivered notable performances in the following years. In 1948, she showed her versatility in Preston Sturges's comedy Unfaithfully Yours, acting alongside Rex Harrison. The next year, she had a standout role in A Letter to Three Wives, which earned her widespread praise and marked a peak in her career. Her performance in this film got her some of the best reviews of her career and established her as one of Hollywood's most sought-after talents. Despite these successes, Darnell faced professional setbacks. She missed out on an anticipated Academy Award nomination for A Letter to Three Wives. Her subsequent roles, like in Slattery's Hurricane, 1949, were commercially successful but didn't keep up the momentum of her earlier acclaim. Through all these highs and lows, Darnell's dedication and resilience shone through. She faced the challenges of Hollywood with determination, constantly striving to prove herself and build a lasting legacy in the film industry. Beyond the cameras. During her early years in Hollywood, Linda Darnell's personal life was as complex as her rising career. She arrived in Hollywood underage and had on-set tutoring because of her busy filming schedule. She missed out on traditional high school experiences but graduated from University High School in 1941. Although she wanted to attend university, her film commitments prevented it. She is still a member of the Sunset High School Hall of Fame. In 1940, while filming Stardust, Darnell briefly dated teen heartthrob Mickey Rooney. Her first serious romance was with Jamie Jorba, whom she met in high school and reconnected with during Blood and Sand. However, they drifted apart because he was reluctant to marry a public figure. At 17, she started dating her publicity agent, Alan Gordon. Rumors spread that they secretly married in a double ceremony with Lana Turner and Joseph Stephen Crane, but these were later proven false. Despite being a popular figure on the Fox lot, Darnell had few close friends in Hollywood, finding the social scene superficial and nauseating. Her relationship with her mother, Pearl, worsened over time. Pearl's contentious presence on set and public accusations strained their family dynamics. In 1942, Darnell faced extortion threats, prompting studio intervention and the arrest of a young perpetrator. That same year, at age 19, she shocked many by eloping with 42-year-old cameraman Peveril Marley in Las Vegas, despite disapproval from family, studio, and peers. Marley, a heavy drinker, introduced Darnell to alcohol, leading to personal struggles and weight issues. Unable to conceive, they adopted a daughter, Charlotte Mildred Lola Marley, in 1948. Their marriage faced many challenges. Darnell had a romantic involvement with director Joseph L. Mankiewicz, which continued despite his unwillingness to leave his wife. This affair deeply affected her, leading to psychotherapy to address her issues. Legal and financial troubles also plagued her during this period, including a lawsuit against her former business manager for fraud. She divorced Marley in 1951, citing cruelty. Battle with health and alcohol addiction. Linda Darnell's struggle with alcohol addiction shows a sad side of Hollywood's glamour. Her battle with alcoholism started during her troubled marriage to Peveril Marley. Marley, more of a father figure than a romantic partner, introduced Darnell to alcohol, leading to a lifelong struggle. Under the pressure of maintaining her career, Darnell turned to alcohol to cope with Hollywood's relentless demands. Fame and beauty standards weighed heavily on her, causing feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. This affected her outwardly too, leading to weight fluctuations and a shaky sense of self-esteem that mirrored her personal turmoil. She made attempts to recover. She had moments of career resurgence, like her roles in Forever Amber and A Letter to Three Wives, but her addiction kept undermining her efforts. The constant balance between public praise and private struggles strained her relationships and career. This created a cycle of ups and downs that defined much of her life. Her alcoholism not only hurt her health but also damaged her public image, overshadowing her talent and beauty with the dark shadow of addiction. Haunted by demons of scandals. One of the most notable controversies in Linda Darnell's life was her relationship with Howard Hughes, a prominent figure in Hollywood known for his tumultuous romances with actresses. Darnell's link to Hughes sparked rumors and tabloid gossip. This added to the pressures of keeping her public image while navigating a complex personal life. The intense media scrutiny surrounded her involvement with Hughes. It led to a narrative of scandal that followed her throughout her career. Another significant controversy that haunted Darnell's public image involved her tumultuous marriages and divorces. She married cinematographer Peveril Marley at a young age. It got attention, especially in Hollywood. There, they scrutinized such unions for their longevity and stability. The divorces of Marley and her second husband, Philip Liebman, came next. They fueled tabloid gossip about her personal life, overshadowing her professional achievements at times. Personal tragedies punctuated Darnell's life. In 1965, a devastating house fire claimed her life at age 41. The fire happened at her friend's home in Glenview, Illinois. Her family saga. From the start of her career, Linda Darnell had a tough time dealing with her mother, Pearl. Pearl was always around and very controlling, which put a lot of strain on their relationship. As Linda became more famous in Hollywood, Pearl's interference only grew, making things even more difficult. Their tense relationship often spilled into the public eye, with family disputes becoming juicy material for tabloids and gossip columns. One of the worst moments was in 1940 when Pearl accused Linda's father of having an incestuous relationship with one of Linda's siblings. This shocking accusation added more drama to their already strained family ties. The public exposure of these family issues made Linda feel even more isolated and alienated. These family tensions didn't just affect Linda personally, they also impacted her social and professional life in Hollywood. Pearl's bad reputation on studio lots made it harder for Linda to maintain a positive public image and navigate the tricky Hollywood social scene. This all added up to a lot of stress and heartache for Linda, both at home and in her career. Her roller coaster career. Linda Darnell's career was a roller coaster ride, typical of many actresses in mid-20th century Hollywood. She burst onto the scene in the late 1930s with 20th Century Fox, quickly winning over audiences with her youthful charm and acting skills. Early films like Hotel for Women, 1939, and Daytime Wife, 1939, showed she could play both innocent and complex characters, earning her praise and a growing fan base. The 1940s were the peak of Darnell's career. She proved she could handle a variety of roles, moving effortlessly between different genres. Her performance in Blood and Sand, 1941, with Tyrone Power was a standout, showcasing her talent for emotionally intense roles. Critics loved her mature performances and striking beauty, calling her one of Hollywood's brightest stars. However, behind the scenes, Darnell faced many personal challenges. Her turbulent relationships and the pressure of Hollywood life took a toll on her health and public image. Gossip and tabloid rumors often overshadowed her professional achievements, making it hard for her to maintain a positive reputation. As Hollywood changed after World War II, Darnell struggled to adapt. The industry's shift away from studio-controlled stardom made it tough for established stars like her to find good roles. She had some successes, like in No Way Out, 1950, and A Letter to Three Wives, 1949, but often found herself typecast and offered fewer quality roles. Personal and financial problems added to her woes. Divorces, financial obligations, and health issues created instability in her life. Despite her resilience and occasional triumphs, her career began to decline in the 1950s. Linda Darnell's journey through Hollywood was marked by incredible highs and challenging lows. She left behind a life of memorable performances, but also a story of the personal struggles that many actresses of her time faced, reviving a dying career. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Linda Darnell tried to revive her career. It had taken a big hit in the previous decade. After enduring personal turmoil and finding it increasingly difficult to land substantial film roles, Darnell shifted her focus to television, seeking new opportunities to reconnect with audiences and showcase her versatility as an actress. Darnell strategically chose to guest star on some of the most popular television series of the time. Notably, she appeared in episodes of Wagon Train and Bonanza, two shows that enjoyed widespread viewership. Her guest appearances on these series allowed her to reach a broad audience, reminding viewers of her talent and helping her to stay relevant in an industry that was evolving rapidly. These roles were critical in demonstrating her ability to adapt to different genres and character types, reinforcing her status as a versatile actress. In addition to her work on television, Darnell ventured into theater, embracing live performances as a means to further hone her craft. She took on various roles in stage productions. She used her extensive experience on camera to bring depth and nuance to her stage performances. This move to live theater was a big step in her career revival. It let her explore new challenges and expand her skills beyond film and TV. During this period, Darnell also continued to pursue film roles, albeit on a more limited scale than during her peak years in Hollywood. She appeared in independent and lower-budget productions, often taking on character roles that showcased her ability to portray complex and diverse characters. These films did not always get wide acclaim, but they gave Darnell chances to stay in the industry. They let her show her lasting commitment to acting. Despite her efforts, Darnell faced numerous challenges in her quest to revive her career. The entertainment landscape of the late 1950s and early 1960s was highly competitive and constantly evolving, making it difficult for even established stars to secure significant roles. Additionally, the shift from the studio system to a more fragmented industry created more obstacles for Darnell. She had to navigate a landscape where there were fewer opportunities and fiercer competition. Nevertheless, Darnell's persistence in pursuing roles that resonated with her and showcased her talent was a testament to her dedication to her craft. She continued to seek out projects that allowed her to demonstrate her acting skills, regardless of the medium or scale of the production. Her determination to remain active in the industry, despite the setbacks and challenges she faced, underscored her unwavering passion for acting. Throughout this period of her career, Darnell tried to reinvent herself. She adapted to the changing Hollywood. Her efforts were signs of her resilience and tenacity. She may not have achieved the same fame and success as during her peak years, but her work in TV, theater, and film at this time showed her enduring talent and commitment to her craft. She could navigate the ups and downs of her career with grace and determination. This ability left a lasting impact on the entertainment industry. It also cemented her brand as a versatile and dedicated actress. As her fame soared, so did the pressures and personal challenges that came with it. Linda found herself entangled in a series of tumultuous relationships and battles with alcoholism, struggles that added depth and poignancy to her life story. Despite these hardships, she continued to dazzle on the silver screen, leaving an indelible mark on Hollywood. Tragically, Linda's life was cut short in 1965 when she perished in a devastating house fire. She was only 41 years old. This untimely death added a haunting chapter to her legacy, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the hidden sorrows that often accompany fame. It includes rare footage, personal photographs, and clips from her celebrated movies, offering a comprehensive look at the woman behind the legend. Her legacy endures, not only in her unforgettable performances, but also in the cautionary tale of the personal cost of stardom. She was the ultimate fantasy. The smoldering eyes, the hourglass curves, the presence that could bring a man to his knees. Sophia Lauren wasn't just beautiful, she was also dangerous. The early phases. You know all those girls with pretty faces that just get lucky? Well, that wasn't Sophia Loren. She was born to be a star. Even as a child, she had this rare, breathtaking beauty that made people stop and stare. Big, mesmerizing eyes, delicate features, and a presence that seemed almost unreal. She wasn't just cute, she was stunning. The kind of girl who looked like she had stepped right out of a painting. But how was she living? Well, let's just say she looked nothing like her background. Sophia was born on September 20th, 1934, in a small clinic in Rome, Italy. Her mother, Romilda Villani, had dreams of being a famous actress, but life had other plans. Her father, Riccardo Ciccolone Murillo, was supposed to be an engineer, but he never really made much of himself. And worse, he refused to marry her mother, just left her to raise Sophia and her little sister Maria with no help, no money, nothing. It's hard to believe that someone as breathtaking as Sophia could grow up struggling, but that was her reality. She and her mother moved to Pozzuoli near Naples, living with her grandmother in a cramped, chaotic home. They barely had enough to get by. But even in poverty, her beauty stood out. People in the town used to whisper about the little girl with the striking eyes and perfect features. Some even called her the most beautiful girl they had ever seen. Her father, though? He wasn't interested. Sophia only met him 3 times in her life, once when she was 5, then at 17, and finally on his deathbed. She later said she forgave him, but that kind of abandonment? It leaves a mark. Even her sister, Maria, wasn't officially recognized by him. And here's the part that would make you cry. When Sophia became famous, she paid him just so Maria could legally have his last name. Imagine that. She also had 2 half-brothers from her father's side, but they were never really part of her life. It was just Sophia, Maria, and their mother doing whatever they could to survive. But even then, people knew Sophia was special. That face, that presence. She was born to be something bigger. And soon enough, the whole world would know it too. The Beauty Princess. By the time Sophia Loren was 15, her beauty was undeniable. She was already turning heads everywhere she went, so it was only natural that she'd enter a beauty pageant. Competing under the name Sophia Lazzaro, she stepped onto the stage of the 1950 Miss Italia contest, representing the Lazio region as candidate number Dusra. She competed her heart out, and when it was all said and done, she didn't take home the grand title. That went to Anna Maria Bugliari, but she didn't leave empty-handed either. She won Miss Elegance, a title that felt almost tailor-made for her. Sure, the judges saw plenty of beautiful girls that night, but there was something about Sophia that set her apart. It wasn't just her face, it was the way she carried herself, the confidence, the allure, the presence. Even at 15, she had the kind of magnetism that couldn't be taught. That moment was just the beginning. Sophia may not have won Miss Italia, but let's be real, none of the other contestants would go on to have her career. Little did anyone know that not only will this little girl be known for her wit and talent, but her beauty will transcend her and write her name in the sands of time. And as far as beauty pageantry was concerned, decades later in 2001, she returned to the pageant as the president of the jury, now a living legend sitting in the judge's seat. And in 2010, she was the one placing the crown on the winner's head. Full circle. The little girl from Pozzuoli, the one who grew up in poverty, the one whose beauty had once been overlooked by the father who abandoned her. She had become the standard of beauty. The world may not have known it back in 1950, but that pageant had just witnessed the rise of a woman who would define glamour for generations. From another world. Sophia Loren didn't just come from a different country, she came from a different world. You see, Hollywood had its symbols of men's desires. But let's face it, as far as American actresses were concerned, they still had to play by a certain set of rules. They could be hot, but not too hot. They could tease, but not cross the line. But in European cinema, where Sophia came from, it was a totally different story. Over there, sensuality wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was celebrated, embraced, expected. And Sophia came up in an industry where beauty and desire weren't just accessories to a character. They were the character. Before Hollywood tried to polish her into an international star, Sophia was already making waves in Italy. She was far from some innocent small-town girl who got discovered and transformed by a studio. She had already built a name for herself in a film industry that didn't shy away from raw sensuality. And let's just say, some of her early roles would have never made it past the American censors. Take Two Nights with Cleopatra in 1954, Sophia played the Egyptian queen, but even if the title sounds like some historical epic film, it was a lot more than that. It was a sultry, steamy film that barely bothered with accuracy and instead leaned all the way into seduction. She slinked around in revealing costumes, played scenes dripping with innuendo, and exuded a confidence that went far beyond anything American actresses were allowed to do at the time. It wasn't just the character that was seductive, it was her. Then there was The River Girl in 1955. In this film, she played a wild, untamed woman living by the water, always drenched, always smoldering, always tempting the men around her. For her, this wasn't just a role, it was her playing herself. The Italian directors knew this, so they didn't try to tone her down or fit her into a prim and proper mold. They let her be sensual, let her be commanding, let her take over the screen in ways that made even Hollywood's biggest bombshells look tame in comparison. And then there was Scandal in Sorrento in 1955, where she spent half the movie in a wet dress, making Marcello Mastroianni lose his mind with desire. These weren't films where censors implied, they practically dared the audience. And so with a star like Sophia before her Hollywood arrival, it is easy to see that she may as well have been from another world. When Hollywood finally got its hands on Sophia, they had a choice: try to tame her or let her be what she was. They opted for a mix. They gave her glamorous roles, dressed her in high fashion, and played up her elegance. But even in her most sophisticated performances, there was always that underlying fire, that rawness that no American studio could fully erase. That was the scandal factor, the thing that made her different from Monroe, from Mansfield, from Taylor. Sophia came from a place where sex appeal wasn't a performance, it was just part of who she was, and Hollywood, for all its rules, couldn't hide it. Wild and untamed. Sophia Loren was no doubt a great beauty to behold, but she was also more than that. She was the kind of woman who made men weak in the knees just by walking into a room. She had this raw, natural appeal that went beyond her looks, though those alone were enough to stop traffic. It was the way she carried herself, the confidence, the fire in her eyes, the way she spoke with that deep, sultry voice. She wasn't trying to be sexy, she just was. Back in the 50s and 60s, Hollywood loved its bombshells, but there was something different about Sophia. Marilyn Monroe had the playful, breathy innocence. Jane Mansfield was all about exaggerated curves and over-the-top flirtation. But Sophia? She had this earthy, almost dangerous kind of sensuality. She wasn't just eye candy, she was a woman who looked like she knew things that could drive a man crazy. Of course, in public, she played the part of the classy European actress. She was always elegant, always poised, always just the right amount of mysterious. But behind the scenes, the rumors painted a very different picture. People whispered about her love affairs, her appetite for passion, and how no man could ever seem to truly tame her. Hollywood executives were obsessed with her. They knew she was gold on screen, but off screen, she was unpredictable. She wasn't like the other actresses who played by the rules, smiled for the cameras, and did what they were told. Sophia had a mind of her own. Directors wanted to mold her, control her, shape her into whatever they thought an American audience wanted, but she wasn't having any of it. She was passionate, stubborn, and fiercely independent. Men fell at her feet, but she never seemed to be the one chasing them. It was always the other way around. And that's what made her even more desirable. Hollywood liked to think it could own its stars, but Sophia Loren, she belonged to no one. Men at her feet. Sophia Loren was the kind of woman men didn't just want, they needed her. She had this magnetic pull, like a flame that powerful men couldn't resist flying straight into. And once they got too close, they either burned up or got completely lost in her. And speaking of getting burned, Carlo Ponti was one of the first men to play with her fire and get burned. Sadly, as much as he tried, he couldn't keep up. For one, he was more than 20 years older, a powerful film producer who saw something in Sophia before the rest of the world did. He basically shaped her career, guided her rise to fame, and eventually became her husband. Beautiful love story, right? It would be, except that behind the scenes, people whispered that their relationship wasn't exactly fueled by passion, and there was actually no love between the two, especially not from Sophia. You see, Carlo was steady, reliable, and deeply in love with her, but Sophia was still young, still full of fire. Some said she had an appetite for excitement that Ponti, despite his influence and devotion, just couldn't satisfy. And if the rumors were to be believed, she didn't always ignore the temptation of other men, and one of the several men offering temptations was Cary Grant. Like Ponti, he was older too, but unlike Ponti, he had an effortless charm that made women swoon. And when he met Sophia on the set of Houseboat, it was like he had been struck by lightning. From the start, he was obsessed, sending her love letters, calling her constantly, practically begging her to leave Carlo and be with him. But Sophia wasn't as hooked on him as he was on her. Sure, she enjoyed the attention. Who wouldn't? It was Cary Grant. But she wasn't willing to throw her life away for a passionate fling, and in the end, that rejection stung. Grant never quite got over her. He wasn't the only one, though. The great Marlon Brando also wanted a piece of Sophia. If Cary Grant was all smooth words and old Hollywood charm, Brando was raw, brooding, animalistic. He had a reputation for taking what he wanted, and according to some whispers, what he wanted, at least for a while, was Sophia. Their alleged fling was all heat, no strings. Two of the most magnetic people in Hollywood, lost in a whirlwind of passion before moving on like nothing ever happened. It was never meant to last. Brando was too wild. And Sophia? She wasn't the type to be anyone's conquest. Then there was Richard Burton. At the time he wanted Sophia, he was already involved with Elizabeth Taylor, but that didn't stop people from speculating. Was there a rivalry? A secret affair? If Sophia and Burton ever had something, they kept it buried deep beneath the Hollywood gossip machine, but Taylor supposedly saw Lauren as a threat. And if Elizabeth Taylor was jealous of you, that meant something. In the end, those were just the men people knew about. There were always stories, secret lovers, late-night rendezvous, passionate affairs hidden from the public eye. Some were just gossip, wild exaggerations from the press. But with Sophia Loren, you could never really tell where the truth ended and the fantasy began. The bisexual whispers. Did you know that in her time, a lot of people believed Sophia wasn't just irresistible to men? There were stories, quiet ones at first, then louder as the tabloids caught wind, that she had indulged in forbidden desires, slipping away into the night with some of Hollywood's most glamorous ladies. It's both insane and juicy when you think about it, and one of the most tantalizing rumors involved none other than Marlene Dietrich. If you know Dietrich and her persona, it would come as no surprise that someone like Sophia would become entangled with her. Dietrich was famously rebellious and daring, and to cap it all up, she was also known for her affairs with both men and women. She was powerful, dominant, a woman who could seduce with just a look, and according to some gossip, she had her sights set on Sophia. The story goes that Dietrich, much older but still oozing that intoxicating allure, took an interest in the young Italian beauty. Now, did anything happen? Well, no one really knows. But the idea of Sophia being swept up in Marlene's world of secret midnight affairs, whispered conversations, and forbidden rendezvous is too delicious not to imagine. But Dietrich was not the only woman Sophia got entangled with. There were also a lot of eyebrow raises about her friendship with Italian actress Silvana Mangano. The two were undeniably close. Too close, some claimed. Mangano, stunning in her own right, had a kind of cool, sophisticated beauty that contrasted with Sophia's smoldering sensuality. People talked, wondered, speculated. Were they just friends, or was there something more behind the scenes? Hollywood had seen plenty of close friendships that were anything but, and some believed Sophia and Silvana shared something deeper, something hidden from the cameras. And of course, there were the endless whispers about fleeting moments. run-ins with famous actresses, mysterious vacations with beautiful women, playful touches that lingered just a second too long. The tabloids, always hungry for scandal, printed anything they could get their hands on. Some stories were wild, exaggerated, full of creative flourishes. Others, maybe not so far from the truth. Sophia herself never confirmed any of it. If she had a taste for women, she took that secret to the grave. But the rumors never really went away. Maybe because people wanted them to be true, or maybe because, in the world of Hollywood, where passion burned behind every locked door, anything was possible. The bombshell rivalry. Hollywood was a battlefield for the beautiful, and when it came to Sophia Loren, there were plenty of women who either wanted to be her, outshine her, or take her down a notch. And would you blame them? She had this European mystery, this untamed fire that made her stand out from the classic Hollywood blondes. And as you might imagine, that didn't sit well with some of the other bombshells of the era. And so the rivalry began. One of the most infamous rivalries was with Jane Mansfield. Now, Jane was a whole different kind of symbol. She was loud, over the top, all curves and giggles, practically built for controversy. If Sophia was all about smoldering, effortless sensuality, Jane was about throwing it in your face. And the moment they were in the same room together, the tension was palpable. And this is not all just all talk. There was actually a famous incident that highlighted this bitter bombshell rivalry. It all went down at a dinner party where Jane accidentally exposed herself in front of the cameras while sitting next to Sophia. Now, make no mistake, this wasn't just some innocent wardrobe malfunction. Many believe Jane did it on purpose, a calculated move to steal the spotlight from the Italian goddess. And Sophia's reaction, caught forever in that now iconic photo, said everything. Her glare, her pursed lips. It was the look of a woman who knew she was being challenged. Some even claimed Sophia played it cool in public, but behind closed doors, she was furious. Jane was trying to one-up her, and Sophia didn't like being upstaged. Well, as dramatic as that was, Marilyn Monroe is another bombshell that allegedly hated Sophia's guts. By the late 50s, Marilyn was still the reigning symbol of men's desire, but here came Sophia, exotic, fresh, and oozing a sensuality that didn't require a breathy voice or a ditzy act. Hollywood loves a new queen, and some whispered that Marilyn felt threatened. Was Sophia seen as the woman who could dethrone her? The press certainly thought so. Now, there were no public feuds between them, but in an industry where power was measured by the number of heads you turned, there was definitely an unspoken competition. Sophia was younger, had a different kind of appeal, and didn't have the same personal struggles that Marilyn battled behind the scenes. As Marilyn's career began to waver, some say Sophia's rise made it even harder for her to hold on to her title as the ultimate fantasy woman. But what happens when two bombshells clash over a man? Well, this is exactly what went down between Sophia and Elizabeth Taylor. If Sophia had a rival who could match her in pure star power, it was Liz. Elizabeth was stunning, fiery, and just as confident in her ability to make men fall at her feet. The gossip magazines loved to pit them against each other, especially when it came to men. Richard Burton was one of the biggest points of speculation. He was wild, charismatic, and irresistible in that rough, dangerous way. Elizabeth had him, but was Sophia ever in the picture? Some rumors suggested Burton had a wandering eye and that he and Sophia had a flirtation, or maybe more. Whether it was true or not, Elizabeth supposedly wasn't a fan of Sophia, and if Liz didn't like you, you knew it. Hollywood thrived on competition, and when it came to beauty, seduction, and star power, Sophia wasn't just playing the game, she was winning. And if that meant stepping over a few other bombshells along the way, so be it. Nympho or free spirit? So here's the real question. Was Sophia Loren really this insatiable seductress, or was she just a woman who refused to be boxed in? What do you really think? We do know that Hollywood loves its labels. If a man is charming and has a string of lovers, he's a ladies' man. If a woman does the same, she's a nympho, a man-eater, a femme fatale. And Sophia. She was constantly caught in that trap. Her beauty was so overwhelming, her presence so magnetic, that people assumed she had to be this wild, untamed creature behind closed doors. But the truth? Well, it's a little more complicated. Yes, there were whispers about her so-called insatiable appetite, about how men fell at her feet, about how she was supposedly impossible to resist. But then, on the other hand, she had a rock-solid, decades-long marriage to Carlo Ponti. They weren't some Hollywood disaster couple burning out in a storm of scandals and affairs. They lasted. That's not exactly the behavior of a woman who couldn't be satisfied. So where did all the rumors come from? A lot of it was just classic Hollywood myth-making. The media saw this stunning, curvy Italian goddess and needed to turn her into a larger-than-life fantasy. Tabloids ran with every little whisper, every alleged affair, every suggestive glance. Did she have lovers? Maybe. But was she the ravenous, uncontrollable seductress that people painted her as? That's a different story. At the end of the day, maybe she wasn't a nympho at all. Maybe she was just a woman who knew what she wanted, who didn't let society's rules dictate how she lived, who embraced her beauty and power without shame. And for some people, especially in the rigid, male-dominated world of old Hollywood, that was scandalous enough.